And there it is. Okay, good. Yeah, so we're talking about taking advantage of the pandemic and using it as a way to get healthier. There's no excuses. I agree with that completely. But I think what a lot of people find is the more time they have on their hands, the less stuff gets done. And I've been in this situation myself because my business is such a well-oiled machine now. Most days I don't have to work. I usually check in, make sure things are smooth. Similar to you, I do some research, but it's not set hours of, okay, at 9 a.m. I'm doing this, and then at 3 p.m. I'm doing that, and so forth. So one of the reasons why I started doing this show is I found that when the shutdown first happened, I went into research mode. I go, now's a great time for me to just get more research done. I bought the anti-aging symposium course. There's an anti-aging course in Vegas every year, right? It's 3 days, super intense, really good information. Now, I didn't go to the one last year, but I found on the website that you could buy every video presentation of that weekend. So I bought that, and I went through just about all of it, probably in the first week or two. I just made it a job. And then I'm going, okay, now what am I going to do with my time? I was like, well, I could just do a 24 marathon. Let's do that. And then, let me catch up on some shows people have been telling me about that are good. And then you're like, you know what? I feel like a total loser right now. I'm just watching TV and so forth. So let me get back into productive mode. And then that's when I started doing this, because I'm still doing the podcast with Sincere, but I go, let me do something for YouTube, something audio visual, just something that's on my own. Aggressive Strength Conversations was the working title. And once I started doing this, I was like, okay, this is a blast. And I've not only do I have a lot of time on my hands right now, a lot of other people have a lot of time on their hands. So there's no better time than now to get people on a format like this, because people are available. So 15 episodes in 5 weeks, just cranking it out. So I find that when I'm busy, though, my workouts are better. I feel better. I like being productive. When I have a lot of time on my hands and I'm not utilizing it, it's almost like it permeates to every facet of society. Your intensity in the gym is not as much. Your zeal for life is not there. So I think what happened with a lot of people during this pandemic is they could have worked out 7 days a week. A lot of people could have worked out twice a day. They could have, at the very least, gone for a walk every day, ate a little bit healthier. Those are all things people could have done. But the vast majority of people, in my opinion, probably just ate a lot of junk food, watched a lot of news, got more fear-based propaganda in their head, binge watched a lot of TV, and then just kept saying, yeah, tomorrow I'll start doing this. Tomorrow I'll start doing that. I think people put on about 30 pounds in the first 2 months.
Yeah, that was the running joke I started seeing. Since my big emphasis, like I totally agree. My big emphasis, like after about a month into it, where I realized, okay, like this is going to be an ongoing situation.
Right.
For better or worse, like we're going to have to deal. So I started telling sort of my clientele, like my following, I'm like, you have to have like one discipline. Obviously, like you're gonna have to discipline your time schedule. But you're going to have to create structure and actually really evaluate, like, what are my priorities? What am I living for? What have I neglected? Like, okay, like work's off the table. Like no one can work on really their profession right now, unless you work from home, which is a bit different. Right. Like for most people, what have they neglected? I usually have like 5 things I tell people. You have family and friends, you have, your work life, you have, let's say, like making money, which, these can be kind of separate things sometimes.
Right.
Then you have your health, and then you have like hobbies. Like, and for most people, it's number 4. It's their health. Health is massively neglected. So, like, you now work on this, and you can create a whole day and structure out, like, improving your health. And some people took advantage of it. I got great testimonials from people. I lost, 20, 30 pounds. I put on muscle. Like, I was getting testimonials. But then, like, I was looking at, like, the mass effects, and it's like, it's now this running joke of, like, the Corona 20 or the COVID 15. Like the freshman 15. Like, really, everyone just got fat. Like, everyone just got overly fat. Yeah, the COVID-19, everyone just gained weight.
Because of the way a lot of freshmen in college eat, people are ordering pizza every night and so forth, drinking sodas, and that's what I see. I saw a lot of people in our neighborhood do it. I see these pizza delivery guys coming in every day. So I think a lot of people, and I'm really glad to hear that you had people that really took advantage of it. And I saw a few people doing that as well. And then when the gyms opened, I talked to people and go, what did you do during the lockdown? They go, hey, I started running again. I started doing this. I started doing that. So people that wanted to get it, people that wanted results, who wanted to get in shape, they found a way to do it. The vast majority of people just binge watched the news, in my opinion, and wasted a lot of time, ate a lot of garbage. And one thing we never heard from our media or our leaders is, what can you do as an individual to not be a burden on our medical care system. I mean, like, we're so worried about the medical care system being overburdened. It's like, well, guess what? The healthier you are, the less likely you are to have serious symptoms, and the more likely you are to be able to just either be completely asymptomatic or you can treat yourself at home, but you're not going to be burdening the medical care system. No one said that, period.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, that was something where, I mean, I feel personally the data has been so misrepresented with the actual in between how many people are dying versus how many people are being tested. But the two biggest factors that were just completely just sort of pushed off the table were the two biggest risk factors,
right?
Being obese, which, okay, so if we can get ourselves healthier, like, you're less likely to get sick, being obese, and then of course, being elderly, and then being elderly and obese.
Right.
And that was just completely ignored. Like, I can't think of, I mean, I try to stay abreast of the sort of the general spectrum. Right. I cannot think of a single article, anything I saw of like how to stay healthy. Like anything, like just nothing.
It wasn't even considered as something, and anyone who talked about, like, hey, what about the benefits of vitamin D supplementation, intravenous vitamin C? It was immediately marginalized as just nonsense. Like, oh, that's not going to do anything. It's like, no, there's no study that shows vitamin D does that and so forth. And in actuality, there's thousands of studies on vitamin D just on the immune system. I mean, I don't know what people are talking about. It's ridiculous.
I take pride that I have some very good friends in the industry who are very, let's just say, like, on the edge of the science. Yeah. And that was one of the first things they started talking about in February of, like, like vitamin D levels, sunlight, this, supplementing there, augmenting there. I wrote an article about that. I want to say in March, when it's I have a pretty large, following people, like it's around 28,000. So I sent out this newsletter. I'm like, hey guys, like, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice, but I'm like, I would really strongly suggest, losing body fat, vitamin D levels, sunlight exposure, open air. Like, I even linked back to like older research from 1910s, 1940s, 1950s. It's been very well studied that if you put people outside, most viruses can't survive in sunlight. And like, it's probably in your best interest to expose yourself to some solar radiation. And some people wrote back and they're like, oh, this is, thank you for saying this. Like, you're not against the media. And then I had other people, I kicked them off the list. They were outraged. How can you say this? You're not a doctor. You don't know that. I'm like, you think healthy is axiomatic, like these very obvious things that, like sunlight being, good for you.
Yeah. Why is that controversial?
Or even like in microbiology, like it's pretty well known that if you put any virus in the sun, it just dies.
Right.
30 minutes, like it doesn't live. But never got mentioned. It wasn't until months later, basically maybe the last month, where I've seen things like, oh, like actually vitamin D, like it is good for you. There was an interview I listened to with a vitamin D, basically like researcher. She spent like 3 hours discussing like these are why these populations are so heavily affected. And this was 3 months ago. Never got covered.
No, never.
Now basically 6 months into it, it's suddenly becoming relevant of like, maybe we can stay healthier doing these things, but still.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And there are actually some small studies that are coming out of certain hospitals around the world where they've collected data showing that people with the lowest vitamin D levels had the highest symptoms, while people with optimal, over 30, they described as optimal. I would say over 60 to 80 is more optimal. Dr. Gordon would say over 80. I would say at least over 60, but at least 30 is in the range. But anyone over 30 had way less symptoms. And it wasn't just one hospital reporting this. It was multiple hospitals that don't have anything to do with each other in different countries. But even if there's no research that sunlight will protect you from the virus, don't you think that getting fresh air and being outside is going to improve your mood? And if it improves your mood, it's going to lower your stress. And if it lowers your stress, your immune function is going to be better. I mean, come on. Why do we have to sell people on the idea of, hey, have you ever thought about getting outside? Getting off your computer, turning your phone off, go for a hike in nature. Have you ever thought about doing that?
The one thing that came out of it was actually pretty cool, at least for myself, was it got me actually researching what I call like ancient health, ancient athletics. Yeah. I really started considering, I'm like, what was, we're talking about these things now that, we think should be obvious to people that are not. I'm like, what was the view on medicine like 2,000 years ago? Because obviously this predates, this predates scientism, that predates the empirical method. I'm like, back in 500 BC, like, how are they staying healthy?
Right.
And I end up, I mean, I'm kind of pitching myself. I wrote like a whole series of newsletters on the topic. I ended up calling it Ancient Athletics. But I was genuinely surprised the amount of, not research, the amount of just general like essays, really books, I should say, that were written by like physicians, like, Hippocrates being the noble example. Everybody always cites Hippocrates. Oh, Hippocrates, the father of medicine. They have no idea that he actually, wrote or transcribed something like probably like 1,000,000 words on like a variety of topics. I mean, like these are extensive historical records. But one of the most noble things that's mentioned in regards to maintaining good health, avoiding melancholia, basically avoiding depression, was sunlight. And it was a normal treatment back in 500 BC that you go to, I guess what we might call today like a sanitarium, but they actually had health spas back in 500 BC. They legitimately had health spas.
Right.
And they were resort style settings. You'd go there. It was a temple, so you'd go and get sort of a ritual religious cleansing, but then you'd be given a special diet. You'd be put outside in the sun for certain periods of time in the morning. You'd speak to somebody. You'd exercise. You'd be put through a workout. That's how they treated mental health. Like There's actual records on this. It was through diet, exercise, and what you might call like, psychotherapy counseling.
Right.
I mean, this is 2,500 years ago. I mean, this is a long time ago. Yeah, I look at that approach now, then I think to today where, maybe only in the last 10 years has it become socially acceptable to say that, let's say, like diet and exercise can improve depression or improve mental health, or that mental health should be approached with like a, let's say I think they call it the Trident approach, where it's like, okay, we're going to assess lifestyle, and we're going to look at, we're actually going to, look at therapy, and then we're also going to maybe look at drugs.
Right.
Yeah. But you go back, 2.5 millennia, and that was considered normal. Like that's how you'd approach any problem. You'd approach it holistically. But somehow that's been lost.
Yeah. Sometimes when you have less technical things to distract you, you tend to prioritize the things that are more obvious. That you go, hey, people need people to talk to. People need physical exercise. People need a place to relax. People need sunlight. They need fresh air. So you go to these places that seem obvious. And I've been to a bunch of countries like Kenya, Uganda, and so forth, where there's a lot of poor people. Now, the one thing a lot of these poor people have that we don't have in America is people currency, meaning that if you're in one of these villages and let's say you're depressed, everybody's going to come help you. They're going to be concerned about you. They're going to look in on you. And that's already going to make you feel better. If one person has a problem with their kid's sick, the whole town is going to coalesce around this person and help them out. So we don't really have that in America. It's not uncommon in the US to live in a neighborhood and have no clue who your neighbors are. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you need to be best friends with your neighbors, but just knowing who they are on a name basis and maybe what they do and just having a little bit of a connection.
Yeah, the U.S. is very like what I call like an atomized society. It's just micro units. Being in Thailand here, I mean, for some, I've read it like online. I've heard from different expats like, oh, it can be very lonely. Like you don't make friends. In my case, because I'm training at a gym and the teacher I have is a very, very, very highly regarded teacher, and I see him every day. We work together every day. Yeah. So I've sort of gained a social network that way. But you're never alone here. Like, I mean, people, you can spend time by yourself, but like if you want to do anything with anybody, even when each day I get to the gym in the morning, and there's boys live at the gym. They're in their teens, they're training, they're professional fighters basically. But they do everything together. They go out to eat. They go run errands. If one of them has to go they could be going buying soap and toothpaste, and there'll be two of them get on the motorbike and they go and do it. So that they always have that community. It's always there. Always. And I don't know I'll profess I don't know what the mental health scene is in Thailand. Maybe they do have lots of depressed, lonely people, but the overall impression of society, like you can tell when you just walk around the streets, you go into the alleyways, you go visit the villages. People do things together. Like there's immense sense of just social cohesion. Like that's there.
I think that's part of Asian culture. India's like that too. I'm half Indian. My mother's from India. So I've been to India a couple times and I talked to relatives out there, and people are way more closely knit. I mean, people will just show up at your house and have tea, and that's not considered rude or like, oh, you know, to bother, like, oh boy, someone's coming over here. I don't want to deal with this person. I mean, in America, if someone just shows up at your house, you're going to call the police. You're going to be like,
you're pissed.
You stalker? I was like, you didn't tell me you were coming over. Don't just show up at my house. Yeah, it's a totally different mentality. Let's find. Let's create a little backstory here, because a lot of people don't know that you're actually in Thailand right now, and you're not on vacation. You've moved to Thailand. and you moved out there to pursue this dream of yours, which I wasn't even aware that you had this dream of becoming a professional Muay Thai fighter. So is this something that you've wanted to do for a long time?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is, yeah, I haven't actually ever talked about this publicly. I mean, people can take it for what it's worth, but when I was younger, like, I mean, this is teenager years.
Right.
So when I was a teenager, I was, like, I mean, like a lot of boys, I was very into martial arts, and I didn't want to go to college. So this would have been like 15, 16, freshman, sophomore year of high school. I didn't want to go to college. My original plan that I came up with, that I was like trying to convince my parents of, is I want to move to Asia and go study at like a martial arts, like academy for like, kung fu, or taekwondo. Like that's what I was trying to tell my parents. Like, I want to go do this. Like, just let me do this. But like this is this is when 2000. It's like, obviously the college sort of narrative was like, no, you have to go to college. No one will ever hire you. How will you get a job? Like you'll never be a millionaire if you don't go to college. Blah, 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 bullshit. I was like, okay, but like I don't want to go to college. So, like I really did. I was not a school person. I love learning, but I did not enjoy the academic environment. Just did not.
Yeah.
But so I kept being told you out of college. I was like, I don't want to go to college. And as it happened in high school, I discovered dance, and I love to move. Like I'm an athlete that way. I love artistic movement. So fighting to me is artistic. Dancing to me is artistic. Right. So I discovered dance, discovered ballet. I was like, and I realized like, hey, you can go to college for a dance degree. I'm like, that seems cool. So I went to college for that, and that was kind of the dream that I'd be a professional dancer. I'm like, okay, I'll do this thing. That didn't work out, and that's kind of what led me into personal training. But I always had this idea from I was probably, like I said, it's 15, 16, 17, 18. After the dance thing didn't work out, I remember reading this book by Sam Sheridan. I want to say it was A Fighter's Heart.
Yeah.
And he basically, great book. But he basically like went to Thailand, lived there, went through this whole journey through like the martial arts world. And I was like 20, probably like 20, 21 reading this. I'm like, oh man, that'd be so awesome. But I graduated college. I had no money. I realized my liberal arts degree was absolutely worthless. I mean, the whole reason I became a personal trainer was because I didn't want to work in an office. I didn't want to have a real job. I'm like, well, I mean, I like training. I like the gym. Like it pays more minimum wage. I'll just kind of do this. Somehow that turned into like a 10+ year career. Right. Like it's a very, very inauspicious story, right? But I always had this idea in the back of my mind. I'm like, God, if I could just like, somehow make enough money, make some kind of business, something happen where I could go train in Thailand. Like, God, that'd be so cool. And then it just so happened, the past 10 years, it's like business developed. I developed the income streams, self-sustaining, developed an online following, all that stuff. And, I was making really good money the past, 2019, like I hit this level of like, oh, wow, like my income's massively gone up. I'm like, I can kind of do whatever I want now. And obviously, like I'm 31. And and I have no illusions about like I'm gonna go be world champion next year. But I'm like, what's stopping me from training? Like what's stop? I have time. I worked 1, 2, 3 hours a day maybe. I'm off my phone most of the time. Like what were the obstacles exactly? There weren't any. So I made the plans in like end of 2019. I'm like, I'm gonna leave the United States. I'm like, I'm gonna travel a little bit. I'm gonna go end up in Thailand. And then it just so happened that timeline kind of got accelerated because of Corona. Right. And once I got here, our service fell into it. I hired a teacher, named Sagat Petchindi, and he served like one of Thailand's great Muay Thai champions. But I sat down with him my first amendment, sort of reverse engineered the process. So I was telling the guy, like, look, I'm 31, like time's not on my side, and I won't say that being older in your 30s, like your body starts to decline. I haven't felt like I've declined, but I've had injuries, right? Right. Like I had a decade where like I've had a bunch of injuries from just doing stupid stuff. I'm like, I have to be intelligent about this. Yeah. So we kind of reverse engineer this process of like, okay, like if you're gonna learn the skill set, obviously like skipping rope, running miles, like that's conditioning. That's same thing, doing push-ups, doing pull-ups, like that's conditioning. Right. That obviously that physically prepares you. But that's the general GPP. You need to learn like the sport specific skill set. What is that? Okay, so that requires bad work, actual like hands-on physical instruction of like learning the actual movement mechanics, efficiency. And I was kind of inspired by Stan Ferding a little bit, the bodybuilder, where he talked about when he wanted to get his pro card, he hired not Flex Lewis, what's it? Bodybuilder's names.
Flex Wheeler or
Flex Wheeler, yeah. he hired Flex. So it's Dan Faraday. I remember reading this interview some years back where he hired Flex Wheeler for like, I want to say like 6 months to literally like train him every single day, like just every workout for 6 months. I was like I can afford to do that. I'm like, what if I hired, this crew, this master to literally train me one-on-one every single day for a year? So that's what I did. So him and I, we were like, all right, we're going to do this for a year. And he never had anyone do this ever since it's
I'm sure.
I think it's probably pretty unprecedented. I mean, most guys when they show up, they're like, all right, they show up at the gym. Maybe they do like the workout in the evening and they go in the morning and they just, they try and slog through it. I'm like, I want to say I'm hacking it, but I'm like, I don't have the time frame to get like the extensive experience, but I can replace it with intensive learning.
Right.
So we create this time frame, like, all right, so the first 3 months, we're just going to gradually keep building up of it, just working on the actual fundamentals, pad work, bag work in the ring, teaching you everything about the actual movement. And then, by the end of 3 months, we're going to be up to training like twice a day. But originally, we're just going to start with like 45 minutes of just learning how to punch, learning how to kick, learning footwork, and just nonstop the entire time. So we're about like 2 months into it. That's what we've been doing. And my training now at this point is we're about up to like 3 hours a day. So like, it's building up. Obviously, body wise, physically, it's dramatically changed. Like my physique, my overall health, my cardiovascular system, obviously, like huge upgrade.
I'm sure.
But so it's been really satisfying. I mean, it's been an amazing experience. And then I've also, I basically I'm there at the gym now like half the day. I know the boys that live there. Like we were just at a stadium last night. We're watching the fights happen. So I'm like, I guess you'd say I'm kind of like I'm living the dream. And it's pretty fucking cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And I think that one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in life, is to accumulate these interesting experiences, because that's what you're really going to remember. You're not going to remember, oh man, that one Monday where I put in 8 hours on the job. I'll never forget that day. It's those really interesting, and this is an interesting experience. You'll probably write a book about this after it's all said and done. You'll probably write articles about it because I'm sure people are going to be curious. Even all the conditioning and stuff like that will probably make its way into one of your programs if it hasn't already. So I think one of the things I wanted to do that's similar to you, so you're inspiring in a way, is where my mom grew up in India, Kerala, is where there's a very pronounced wrestling community there.
Yes.
Remember when Matt Fury came out with combat conditioning, and everyone's trying to do 500 Hindu squats and Hindu push.
Great gamma. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Now at this center in Kerala, this wrestling camp, I mean, you're not even considered for training unless you can do 500 Hindu squats. Teenagers do 500 Hindu squats. The adults do sometimes 1,000 a day or more. So I always thought it would be really interesting to immerse myself in that. One, because I want to spend some time in India because I haven't done that in a long time. But while I'm out there, it would be really interesting, maybe not take it to the degree you are. I'm not looking to compete in wrestling, but just do the conditioning that they do on a regular basis and just see what happens, just for an interesting experience. And they do some weight training too with club bell type stuff. Yeah. They do things that look similar to a mace, like a homemade mace. They've got some dumbbells and so forth. Honestly, I think they could learn a lot from me on that front, but I could learn a lot more from them on what they do. So I think and I wouldn't go out there with the pretext of, okay, I'm going to show these guys how it's done, weight training, because that's a surefire way to get your ass kicked out of place. It's like go to a boxing gym and try to give technique tips to people. The first time you walk in, no one's going to deal with that. No one's going to tolerate that. Go in there with attitude, you're going to leave with 2 black eyes and you're going to be limping to your car. But I think it would just be a cool experience. And I think sometimes people complicate things too much because they're thinking, okay, I want to do what you're doing, but how am I going to make money off of it? They're thinking from that, because the Western mindset is, how do I monetize everything I do? So I don't want to do something if there isn't a way to monetize it. And the problem is once you attach that to it, your effort is not going to be as good as if you're doing it just for the sake of doing it. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's you have a right to your actions, but not the results of your actions. And as I get older, that makes more and more sense to me. As a young man, I go, that doesn't make any sense. Exactly. The whole point of action is for the results. You say I can't have the results. It's more focused on excellence in the action phase, and the results will take care of themselves. And I've always found that to be true. So I think what you're doing is going to inspire a lot of people and possibly multifaceted ways. Someone may decide, you know what, I've always wanted to move to Costa Rica, and then they see what you're doing here and go, fuck it, I'm going to go to Costa Rica.
Yeah, I believe it could. I mean, what do most people, I think, desire in life? Like, people want their version of freedom.
Right.
Like, what does it mean to be free? And that might be a very defined, articulated definition for somebody where they have a vision of what that looks like. That could just be a very vague desire of, man, I wish I didn't have to work how I work, and I didn't have to work. It's not necessarily very well thought out.
Right.
For myself, I had this idea, like I said, when I was much younger, that I want to completely own my time, and have no conditions as to how it could be used by anybody. Not a boss, not a job, not someone telling me, you have to show up here, you have to do this. I'm like, right. I want to have total control over my day. Like if we have only the day, I want total control over my day.
Right.
Now that I have that, then like I said, it became this question of like, all right, well, now what do I do that I have that freedom? Okay, well, now I can pursue this and pursue something unto excellence, and just whether it works out or whether I get my ass kicked 20 times in a row, I can say that I did it. I took it to a level that most people will never approach, and it was personally satisfying for me. And I've been asked about it a lot from some of my followers, like, oh, what's happening? Like, what's the training going? I'm like, yeah. I think I've kept mum on like very relatively mute on a lot of it, since like you said, like I'm not here to try to like YouTube the experience of like, here's how I moved to Thailand and became a profile. I'm like, documentary. Like I don't maybe it works out great. I'm like, I'm here because this is just something that was personally meaningful.
Right.
And then it's also cool at the same time though. Like as I'm going through the experience, I'm still I have that training mindset where like I'm watching what I'm doing from that spectator approach. I'm like, how do these guys really train? Let's just say from like sort of like a scientific level. And it's really made me like take a step back and reevaluate a lot of like my conceptions of training. Since I could tell you like right now, like a lot of this easy examples like Muay Thai fighters in general, they do very little actual direct strength training. So like I'll give you an easy example. Like they don't really train legs how we would call training legs.
Right.
So like like doing like squats and deadlifts, that's not a thing here at all.
Yeah.
Like gyms don't have, but they're not putting a bar on their back. Right. The one thing they'll do sometimes, if the gym has it, is they'll use a Smith machine, right? The terrible Smith machine. They'll put like a play. They'll put a play on each side and do like half squats really fast. But in their mind, I'm like, their sport doesn't require them to get into a deep squat position. They might do some body squats and warm up, but they're doing kind of like a Hindu squat. They're just going down and up, knees over toes. But why? Then I was trying to, looking at, I'm like, why do they have such muscular legs? Well, kicking is plyometric.
Oh yeah.
Kicking is a plyometric activity, and they do a lot of running. And if you ask one of the coaches, like, how do you get strong legs, coach? He's like, oh, you need to run, and you need to practice your kicks, and like you run with the tire. A lot of times they'll put the tire, sort of they'll drag it, and like in that in their mind, it's like, oh, you just make your legs strong. Maybe if you have a hill, they'll make you like run the hill. And these dudes, they've got like, my crew himself, like Sagat, like he's got like bodybuilder level calves. If you look at this guy's legs, just vascular, these huge freaking calves. Yeah. I don't think he's ever done calf raises in his freaking life. But just skipping rope, doing the kicks, running with tire. I'm like, you end up with this impressive level of muscular development. So it makes you realize like there's many ways to obviously reach a particular goal, but training for performance, like actual true athletic performance, versus training for like aesthetics and what we assume to be like transference from the gym, it's not necessarily the same thing. There can be a big gap in those areas. I haven't lifted heavy in probably like almost 2 months, because I figured out the first like 2 weeks. I'm like, if you're trying to, let's say, like do a heavy squat, heavy deadlift workout, and then go train the next day and throw like 500 knees, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The guy that I was listening to a lot was Firas Zahabi. He's like George St. Pierre's personal trainer. Yeah, he's great. And he's like, I listened to him. He said the same thing. He's like, you can't really lift heavy if you're going to try to be a fighter. He's like, you can do calisthenics. Kettlebells work great. I realized that you can swing the heavy kettlebell. He's like, if you're thinking you're going to get like a whole bunch of spinal compression one day and then show up in the gym the next day and be kicking ass, like it's not going to happen. You're just going to be slow.
Absolutely. And then a lot of that stuff makes you really tight, powerlifting. And I enjoy powerlifting. I do heavy deadlifts and so forth, but I don't have any illusions about the negatives if you don't address them. Your body can become really tight. You don't move well. You feel heavy on your feet. And I don't like all those things. So I balance the equation. I make sure I do mobility work. I make sure my cardio is on point. Last year, I had a horrible case of the flu, which turned into pneumonia. The symptoms I had sound really similar to COVID. So it took me 2 weeks of hell, and then it took several months before my cardiovascular system started coming back. Strength came back relatively fast, but I was just tired all the time. You go walk around the block, you're tired. I would say it took a good 3 to 5 months until I started feeling pretty good. And what really helped is just doing a lot of interval training. I started making that a priority. I go 3-4 times a week. I'll use an elliptical machine, so it's just no joint wear and tear. I can just hit it hard, 30 minutes. That made a huge difference. And we actually bought one for the house when this whole pandemic started because I wanted to keep doing it. There was a neighbor selling one. I go, boom, let's get that. And I'm really glad I did, because a lot of people who love lifting heavy weights, and I'm one of those people, but you don't want to, they have this negative attitude about cardio, conditioning, whatever you want to call it. Oh, that's going to take away from my strength. My muscles are going to start shrinking. People have all these unwarranted fears. And I go, well, look, how strong are you actually if you can only execute that strength for a few seconds or a minute at the most, and then you're dead, and then you're worthless. I mean, the better your cardiovascular training, the stronger you can be, because you can sustain that strength for a better period of time. And then more importantly, you're healthier. Your heart health's important. A lot of people who lift weights have high blood pressure because they eat crappy diets, they take a lot of energy drinks, and they don't sleep that well, because probably from all the energy drinks. And then they don't do any kind of cardio or any kind of conditioning work.
I'll put myself in that same camp for probably for most of my 20s. I did very little actual cardiovascular conditioning. Since you remember the trend, obviously you got more years than I do, where it was the early 2000s, mid 2010s. It was cardio, screw cardio, nothing more than 5 reps, don't run. The absolute bare minimum, drag a sled for 5 minutes, and then you're good, right? Everyone's good. And I think everyone's probably end up with high blood pressure and elevated triglycerides. But then when the research actually started being examined, it's no, unless you're running double-digit miles weekly, running 2 miles 3 times a week is not gonna hurt your gains, bro. Going for a walk for 45 minutes, 60 minutes, nothing bad is happening. Yeah, but then I realized a lot of it was just that bias of people who were really good at lifting heavy stuff. You like what you like, and then what you don't like, you somehow create sort of this rationalization as to why it's not even worth doing in the first place. Right. And in reality, if you want, this, I think everyone should know this. If you want to have a healthy, functional physique body, you should probably be able to this reasonably jog 2 miles. You should probably have a low resting heart rate. Biometrics are real. If your heart rate's elevated, your blood pressure's elevated, if you get some blood work done, it's your triglycerides are kind of high.
Yeah.
It's probably not good long term. It's not a reasonable estimation to make.
Yeah, totally, exactly. So I think, you made a good point about it. We like to focus on what we like to do. What's interesting about me is people know me as the strength guy, but actually endurance comes to me much easier than strength does. In fact, when I worked out at Mark Phillippe's gym for a couple months, several years ago, 10 years ago, he would make fun of me because he would look at what I could do for reps, and then we would do a maximum effort. He's like, you should be able to do way more than that. He goes, I think your muscle fiber is like a woman is the problem here, Mike. You got a lot of slow twitch muscle fiber, but you don't have the fast twitch. And I go, you know what? It's probably true, but it's probably better that I have that, because I'd rather be able to sustain a performance than just be able to have a maximum. Let's say you can deadlift 600 pounds once, but you couldn't do 550 3 times to save your life. You're just really good at that 1 rep strength. So that's what your skill set is. And that's great if that's what you want to do. But like you said, you want to have, I think especially as you get older, you want to have a more comprehensive understanding of health. Obviously I like to take it as far as optimizing hormones and making sure sleep's on point, restoration, the whole 9 yards. But I mean, here like you talked about how only recently have people tried to make a connection between diet and exercise and mental health. Well, only recently are people starting to understand the importance of optimal hormones. I mean, the narrative has been for so long, if you're 45 and you go to a doctor and your total testosterone is 300, so it's in the normal range, but it's at the bottom. And then your free testosterone is 55 on a scale of 55 to 150. So again, at the bottom. The doctor's going to look at that and say, well, yeah, it's normal. This is supposed to happen. Your numbers are just supposed to go down. So we have this narrative that as you get older, you're supposed to decline, and you're supposed to accept that. You're supposed to be okay with that. And I don't think we should have this fear of aging. I don't think that's healthier either. But this notion of just accepting being unhealthy is extremely dangerous, in my opinion, for society. It creates a weak society. And honestly, that's what we have right now in America. We have a very weak society. We have a very obese society, a weak-minded society. And that's why the numbers are so high in America compared to many other countries.
There is this sort of this, I mean, I agree. There's this weird idea. I've seen this even with like young people, like they're in their 20s, 30s. And like this running joke of like, oh, you're past 25 now. Everything just goes downhill. You hit 30. Like, happiness will never, you'll never experience happiness again. Welcome to responsibility. I'm like American society is like, it's both infantilized. It over romanticizes this, I don't know, this magical period of youth when you don't have to have any real problems.
Right.
But then physically, like everyone physically declines. I've gotten that message now probably at least a dozen times the past few months from guys who they're in their 30s or 40s, and they're trying to start exercising. And it's like, hey man, like I'm doing this and like it's slow and I feel like I don't have the energy. I'm like, you should probably get your testosterone levels checked. I mean, I say that to people literally every week, and pretty much every week I get messages back. Hey man, like I got the results back. I guess is this kind of low? Maybe they got free, maybe they got total. But something like my doctor, my total testosterone is only 350, but he said that was fine. But like, my energy levels, like you said, like I was telling you, they haven't been good. Like you should probably get a second opinion. Yeah, you should probably try improving your hormonal health. And then obviously there's the other questions of like, what's sleep like, what's diet like. You're gonna take a multi-spectrum approach. I mean, I recommend aggressive strength. God knows how much.
Oh, and I appreciate it. I get a lot of your people.
Yeah, but it's such a strange thing with people. And I usually get a thank you eventually at some point, like thank you for keying me in on that. But like hormonal health, whether you want to call it like hormonal optimization or restorative aging, whatever. There's lots of terms for it.
Right.
Just nobody thinks of it, and they're never really told it either. Even like the mainstream general medical consensus seems to be that maybe you test people and then you just tell them like it's just part of the process.
Right.
It's too bad you feel like shit. Maybe do some exercise, eat a little better, and here's your script.
Yeah, you go in with low testosterone and they're going to put you on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety drug. And it's like you have depression and anxiety because your testosterone's zero and all of your other hormones are probably depleted too. DHEA, pregnenolone, these are all important as well. And no one's looking at any of that stuff unless you go to someone who specializes in that. But you made a good point about a lot of young people. I get this too. Someone is 30 and they say, well, I'm 30 now, so I can't train the way I used to. I go, 30? And I go, plus, how old do you think I am? Because it's obvious I'm way over 30. So why are you telling me that? Like, I'm going to agree with that statement. I go, at 46, I can still train just as hard as I did 15 years ago. The difference is that I have to dial things in now. I have to be smart about how I train. So I don't do anything dumb anymore. Back then, like you said, we would do a lot of dumb stuff. We're bench pressing with our butt 2 feet off the bench, and we're thinking we're actually hitting a new PR. We're doing bench pressing curls as our workout 3 times a week, and then wondering why our physiques are not improving. We're doing everything with bad technique, training to failure, wondering why we're so beat up and we're not getting stronger. So we get a lot of bad advice. And I think now there's a real dilemma for men, especially because masculinity is so attacked. We hear these moronic terms such as toxic masculinity.
Everything's toxic.
I was like, look, guys that are assholes are just assholes. It's not because they're men. Those guys just happen to be assholes. All right. So it's not toxic masculinity that's making people act this way. Those people are just jerk offs. So let's not just make these sweeping generalizations about like, oh men, we need to do better. I was like, no, you need to do better. It's like, don't include me in this. We need to do better because I'm doing better. You need to do better. So we're getting a lot of bad advice, and then we have the male feminists who are the worst of the feminists because. And let's be honest, 99% of male feminists thinking this is a gateway to getting laid or having getting a girlfriend or something like that, when it's probably a gateway to being in the friend zone for the rest of your life. But that's a separate point. So when you have all of this negativity about masculinity, it's not surprising that a lot of men are not thinking, okay, I wonder what my testosterone levels are. Maybe I should look into that. And testosterone is important for women too. If they have really low levels, they're not going to feel good. And then the ones who do know, they also have bad information, thinking that, okay, I need to get my testosterone as high as possible, and I need to get my estrogen down to zero, make it as low as possible. And in reality, it's way more nuanced than that. You have to have an optimal level of estrogen too. Otherwise, you have no erections, no sex drive, and your mood is terrible. Your bones are going to get weaker, the whole shebang. So it's this balance, balance among the orchestra. So it's fairly complex, but it's crucial. I mean, it's extremely important. It should be part of every yearly physical checkup when someone goes in. Let's run a hormone panel, see where you're at. Let's do some things to improve.
It should. It's the thing I tell guys now that they should, whatever, especially the younger guys, whatever age they are. Let's say you're 21, and I've done this. I'm like, if you start getting your hormones checked every year, and I realize, for a 21-year-old, this might be, you're 21, so you're probably not going to do it. But let's say you are listening to this right now. Right. If you get your hormones checked every year from, let's just say, like when you're, maybe every other year, you're like 15, 17, 19,
right?
21, 23, 25. You do that. Now you have a whole set of data points and you can see what your levels were at, let's just say 17, 24, 27. And as you age, if you start to decline, well, you actually have some numbers, you have some data to look at. So now if you go to the doctor, it's not you randomly getting your hormones checked at the age of 37. It's like, oh, I don't know what my testosterone or my vitamin D or my magnesium or my progesterone or my estradiol was. Like, I've never even heard of these things. I'm like, no, you actually know what it is, and you have some data points. You have you can graph it out, and now you can help maintain optimal health. Yeah, that should be the goal. Should be. Yeah, I mean, for a lot of guys, it's just unfortunate they go to the physician the first time ever in their life for an actual comprehensive checkup, and it's just like magical numbers and magical science and scientific jargon. They got no idea what any of it means at all. None of it. And
That's
how do you make informed decisions?
I felt it was so important. This topic was so important that I needed to take it upon myself to learn as much as possible, to have a certain level of expertise in this, not so much for teaching other people, but for myself. So that at the very least, when I go to a doctor, at least I'll know whether he or she knows what they're talking about. You want to know enough that you know whether they know what they're talking about. And most people have no clue about any of this stuff. So now you're just relying on this person in front of you to do the right thing for you. And that's a pretty precarious agreement right there, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And a lot of times it's going to be negative. And with a lot of young people too, there's guys in their early 20s that email me about low testosterone. And that's pretty frightening, because when I was in my early 20s, I wasn't worried about what my testosterone levels are. That wasn't a concern, like, oh, let me get that checked out. And there's always going to be these cases, these outliers of people that are in unique circumstances. Maybe they have traumatic brain injury, maybe there's something else going on. But it shouldn't be prevalent that there are a lot of young men with low testosterone, but that's the impression I get.
I get that too. I mean, I get guys who are, like I said, like under 25, and they send me their numbers, and I mean, there's some of them are healthy. Let's say they'll be over like 700. I'm like, you're great, dude. You're great. A lot of guys, they're way under 500.
Yeah.
And they're like 22. I'm like, that's only going to go down with time. I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if you're lifting right now or getting enough sunlight or getting enough sleep, or maybe you need to cut back on the alcohol, but like, you need to make some pretty dramatic changes, like immediately. If you need to get that up so you can feel better, but two, like, this is something you're actually going to need to keep track of and monitor, like, over the long term. Like, it shouldn't be that low.
No, it shouldn't. And if that's where you are at 21, where do you think you're going to be at 40, 50? Because it's not going to just get better on its own. 400 is going to go, that number could be cut in half by the time you're 40 if you don't do anything about it. I mean, the good news is there's a lot you can do about it. A lot of people have horrible diets. We know that. So you put someone on a healthy diet, that's going to make a big difference. A lot of people don't sleep well. We improve their sleep, that's going to make a difference. You address mineral deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies, etc. Now we're starting to get some treadway here. Start putting on a good exercise regimen. Now we're starting to move. But it's scary that we're seeing numbers that low in men in their 20s that we probably wouldn't have seen, let's say, 20 years ago until men were in their 40s or beyond. So that's a little scary. And part also is more people are getting tested now as well. So that's, when I was growing up, no one was getting their testosterone tested in their 20s. So now we have a lot of people in their 20s where they're finally getting advice from you and myself and Delgado and Gordon, like, hey, go get your testosterone levels checked. So maybe these numbers have been low for a long time and we just didn't have the data to confirm or deny it. I don't know. But to me, it seems like it's more of a modern trend. And there's a lot of it's a very complex situation to determine what are the big factors that are causing this. We have environmental pollutants. I mean, there's so many different things. It's hard to pinpoint any one thing, probably just an accumulation of so many factors. But it's a little scary. And it's a little scary when we see such lack of enthusiasm. Like you're trying this notion of no one's trying to do anything. Like they look at what you're doing and going, that's crazy. I could never do that. When there's people like you that are doing these things, going out there and you're pursuing goals that you've always had, you're taking the initiative.
Yeah, on the subject of the pursuit of goals, like I get that question quite often because a lot of my followers are young guys where it's like, how do I have a passion for something? How do I so really sort of apply effort. And there's this sort of like magical thinking involved. If you can just find a thing that you immediately are incredibly like in love with and enthralled by, then just like work becomes easy, and then the steps become easy. Everything, all the answers reveal themselves. And the point I've made this so many times in the past few years is that you don't need to have a passion for something to work hard at it. Much of what we do in life, we're not necessarily passionate about. And that's a very nebulous term even.
Right.
You're not always going to be in love with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And then even if you do love something, there's going to be ugly parts to it. There's going to be difficulties.
Yeah.
There's going to be aspects of it that you don't enjoy. But, if something is meaningful to you, like the way I phrase it, like if you can take it seriously, if you can find something and you can take it seriously and it improves your life, in some measurable way where it's like, okay, my life is better for doing this and I can do it with this level of seriousness, that's probably worth doing. Does anyone like to have a job per se? No, probably not. A lot of people don't like working, but life costs money. You're going to have to do something that obviously you can financially support yourself. And maybe in the process of doing that job, you find a way to work for yourself. You find a way to change the kind of work that you do. But you need to go through the shit first.
That's right.
If you're out of shape, it's being, for all the guys who are out of shape, but most people today are deconditioned. Is it enjoyable to go from being deconditioned to being fit? Actually, it's really not, because those first few months, you're going to feel they're tough. You're going to be weak. You're going to be out of breath. You're going to be sore. You're going to be beat up. You're going to hurt every day. It's going to seem very far away, this future goal, becoming this new version of yourself where you're, fit and trim, and you're not, gasping for air, and you're not flailing away on the bar or the dumbbells or whatever the movement may be. You're struggling to do a pull-up. Maybe you're 6 months out from really having not your ideal body, but a healthier body.
Right.
So you're going to have to go through this struggle period first.
Yeah.
Is that enjoyable? No. Is it necessary if you want to, achieve better health, if you want to have a good life? Yeah, 100% is. Most things in life that are meaningful to us, they're the most difficult experiences.
Right.
Looking for easiness in everything, it's paradoxical. The easier you want life to be, the harder life will be on you.
Right. Oh, that's very true. And your point about passion is bang on, because if you rely on having to be passionate about everything you're going to do at all times, then you're going to be someone that just keeps skipping around. You're going to do one thing for a little while, like, oh, I'm not passionate about it anymore. Let me try this. It's like, yeah, I'm not passionate about that anymore. Let me go over here. And you're never going to get really good at anything, because I would say, like, when I was a kettlebell instructor, I was really passionate when I first started. Yeah. But I became a much better instructor when I wasn't that passionate about it anymore. Because now it became, okay, I'm going to go in there. I don't want to say one word that's a wasted word. So I don't want to just keep talking for the sake of talking. So it became very precise. My instruction became very direct and easy to understand and very quick. I could walk around a room, boom, 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 boom. You know what to say to the person. Now, the problem is I started enjoying it less and less and less. But the irony is I was better. This was the best of me as being a kettlebell instructor was 10, 12 years into it. But I was way more passionate about when I first started and had 5 people at a park. I'm like, wow, I'm finally doing something that I enjoy doing and I'm getting paid to do it. This is incredible. I still remember the very first course I ever did and how much money I made and who was there and everything. So passion's an interesting thing. And I like what you said, because I think about this often, is that you're not always going to be passionate about even things that you enjoy doing. I'm not passionate about going to the gym every time. I mean, some days I'm like, man, I can't wait to go in there and try it. But that's maybe half the time, maybe not even that much. A lot of times you're going, okay, I don't want to do this, but I'm just going to have to suck it up and get over there and get it going, get the numbers in.
Yeah, that's something that watching the Thais train is actually like it gives you a lot of insight since they train every day. Like everybody trains 6 days a week, usually twice a day.
Wow.
And they'll occasionally take days off, but they don't actually train at 100%. Now, I mean, this is not to say they don't train hard. Like, I mean, everybody trains hard. Yeah, and this, if you're doing this sport, everybody's training hard. Like that's a given. But when you actually watch them train, yeah, it's done at a very deliberate but not rushed pace. They'll do you do the morning run. Okay, we come back. Maybe we do some skipping rope. Okay, we wrap our hands. Okay, we start maybe working the bags. Okay, and everyone's very intentional with what they're doing. But you can see sometimes guys will have those days where they're just on, and they're like everything's done with full power, and they are killing it. And then you have the days where you can tell someone's tired, they're slogging or struggling, but it's just accepted as part of the process. And it's very much like it's very this anti. It's like I mean not anti is the right word, but it's very different from the Western mindset. Like we're in the West. Let's say we're very goal oriented. We want to hit our goals. What's the goal? For them, they're already professional fighters. Like they're 12, right. 13. Like the boys last night, I was, two of the boys from Argent that fought. They were 14 and 16. They both have had each of them have had 35 pro fights.
Wow.
They're 15, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So for them, this is just part of the process. Like if they lose, they win. It's part of the process. They're still going to go to the gym on Monday, and everything is going to keep continuing. They can't really be goal oriented so much. I mean, some of them might aspire to be a champion one day, but they know that it's going to just take thousands of hours of training, and it's just going to be the same, repetition day in and day out. So they have this, investment process where they really love what they do. Of course, this is their life, but at the same time, there's this relaxation towards it. Okay, I wake up, this is my life. I do this every day. It doesn't really matter how I'm feeling about it on any given day. It's going to be done regardless. That's sort of the mindset. Yeah, and then you compare that to people, let's say, like I said, Western world, where it's all right, I'm gonna go to the gym 3 days this week, 4 days this week. I have a 12-week goal. I want to get bikini body, beach body, fit body. I have a competition. I need to train for the competition. I'm like, that definitely has its place. I'm not gonna say being goal oriented is stupid. There's a time and place to set goals. But for something, if you really want it to become part of your life, part of your identity, or it's just something you do, goals don't necessarily factor into it. Maybe you have a 1-year goal, but it's also the rest of your life they're going to be training.
Right.
So, right. Mediating and balancing that process, it's different. And it's helped me to even, see them and, immerse myself in it. I'm like, okay, I could be super goal oriented. It's I've gotten that question from lots of people. So where are you going to fight? You're going to fight pro? Where are you fighting? I'm like,
yeah.
That's obviously a goal. That's a goal to eventually have that, professional debut. Okay. But in the long term, if I'm going to be doing this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years at least, and I love martial arts. This is not a short-term thing. I'm like, that's going to be one of many. That's going to be something that ends up, I end up, getting something scheduled for a weekend, and it comes and it goes. I'm still going to be at the gym training on Monday, so I'm not really focusing on the goal. I'm just focusing on the process itself. If I master the process, the goal will more or less take care of itself.
That's a really salient point, and that's one that's very difficult, as we discussed already, for people over here to understand, because there's always so much focus on a goal, and then it's this hatred of the process. So if you hate the process, you're never going to achieve the goal, because you're not going to last long enough to achieve the goal. But if you love the process, you don't have to worry about the goal, because that's going to take care of itself. And on a separate point, just one thing you brought up about conditioning, it just reminded me of something that George St. Pierre said one time. He said, the better my technique, the less conditioning matters.
Yes.
So, because for us is really into, we're going to do perfect takedown. When you go for a takedown, it's not going to be sloppy. So you only have to do it once when you take down your opponent. When you put in this move, you're going to catch it the first time. So you can triangle choke this guy the first time, or rear naked choke the first time. So his whole thing was precision. And the more precision you have, the less you have to worry about your conditioning, and also the less you have to worry about outcome, because you have the confidence to apply your skill set in a dominating fashion that you're going to achieve that goal.
Yeah, Sagat has something that he calls. I'm paraphrasing this from kind of broken English, so there's gonna be certain liberties taken with the interpretation. But the two things that he really strongly emphasizes is basically technical execution, and then basic principles of just fighting itself. Yeah, in the Thais, they have this saying, this phrase like "sabai sabai." It basically just means like relax, relax. And the goal for them each time they get in the ring is they actually want to have fun, and you always want to fight relaxed, because as soon as you tense up, as soon as you start, let's say getting your head where you want to start muscling, punching the guy, kicking the guy, whatever, you're gonna burn more energy, because like boxing and striking is this, when you actually start like really studying it, you realize it's somewhat dichotomous, where if you want to hit as hard as you can, if you want to be as fast as you can, you have to not try to hit as hard as you can.
Right.
They've told me, some of the transcripts they've spoken English, where it's very common, like oftentimes you might get like big Westerners that come, and maybe they're very muscular, maybe they're like the big guys, or bodybuilder-ish, and those guys, they have this mindset of like, because this is from lifting weights, right? It's like, well, if I want to lift a maximum amount of weight, I need maximal tension, I need maximal stability, I need to like go kind of get in that psycho mode, and then I'm going to punch really hard. If you do that, it makes you slower. Right. It makes you slower. It makes you telegraph everything. You burn more energy. You can't bounce on your feet and be light and be able to move. If that's your approach to moving, so like, what's the opposite of that, or what's the solution? Well, you have to learn how to relax. You have to learn how to relax, and if you relax and you learn, first you got like proper technique. So you learn true technical competency.
Right.
So you have the technical competency down, and then you learn the true basic principles of positioning your body, leverage, footwork, basic fight strategy, like being able to throw a jab, being able to throw a 1-2. These basic elements. If you learn that, then you should be able to more or less fight anyone, relative to your level, and you should be able to build. But if you only learn, let's say, like first, the thing that he tells me, a lot of times guys will only focus on one or the other. Maybe you can learn the basic principles of like, hey, throw a 1-2, but if you're throwing the 1-2 wrong, and a lot of even pro fighters don't necessarily punch that well technically, but they might be able to get away with it if they're big and they have the gift of strength.
Right.
If you don't have good, technical execution, then you'll be able to take advantage of, even if you do know the basic principles. At the same time, you could actually learn very good technical, performance. But if you don't really know the basics of actual fighting, you could be one of those guys where I saw this recently in like the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight.
Right.
Where Wilder's obviously, he's got the big guy, huge right hand, like he's the champion. Like, who am I to talk shit, right?
Right.
But he would do these certain basic things. And I was showing Sagat this because I kind of want his opinion, and he was kind of laughing. He's like, oh, he never learned basics. Where he'd be fighting and he'd cross his feet up, where he'd literally step behind himself, and he's like, when Sagat trains me, he's like, no, you never cross your feet. Because as soon as you do, you're just going to get hit because you're out of position, right? This is a basic thing. He calls it basics. The whole fight, every time he'd get hit, he'd go backwards. He'd start crossing his feet up. He wouldn't move his head. He'd drop his hands. He'd just go move in a straight line. He's like, oh, no learn basics. So he's watching this. He's like, no fighter, no learn basics. Big punch, big strong, but no basics. I'm like,
right.
I guess it doesn't matter what level you're at. You could be, professional level fighting. I mean, hell, there's even the world of powerlifting, fitness. There's guys at the elite level, IFBB pro and all that. They're still refining their technique. They're still learning new ways to do things.
Always get better at techniques. Like Matt Brown said, he goes, you can never get too good at elbows or punches or anything. You can always improve. And that's interesting what you say about Wilder, because I'm a big fan of Wilder and Fury. I like both guys. I like their personalities as well. And as unconventional as Wilder is, it's highly entertaining to watch him fight because it's so awkward. The way he throws I mean, he comes off on both feet and throws a punch. I've never seen anyone do that. And I think this last fight showed the limitations of his skill set, because he's gotten away with beating everyone he's ever fought. Mm-hmm. He had that one draw with Fury. Everyone else he's finished. He's either finished or to a decision, but he's finished most of these people. So why fix what's not broken was probably his attitude going into this. Like, hey, I knocked him on his ass last time. I'll just do that again. But Fury is the exact opposite in the sense that his technique is amazing to watch. The way he bobs and weaves, the way he gets out, avoids punches. I mean, he was in that one fight he had before Wilder where he's up against the ropes and he's just standing there bobbing. This guy's throwing everything and he's missing. And just the way he moves is amazing, especially when you look at him physically. You're like, I can't believe that guy moves like that. But actually it makes some sense, because you never want to judge someone's fighting ability by their physique. That's a huge mistake. And that's a mistake fighters make on the street. They go, well, that guy looks like he can kick ass. I go, based on what? The fact that he works out with weights, that doesn't mean anything. If anything, it may be the opposite. That may actually impede his fighting ability. And there's some goofy looking guys I've met I met this one guy at the gas station who looked like Opie, this redhead guy. And we just started talking about training. And he was like, man, I get into fights all the time. And I have a background in Muay Thai and I have a pretty high level background. He's like, so I win all of these fights. But a lot of people fuck with me because they just think I'm an easy mark. They look at this goofy looking white guy with no big muscular development. They're like, oh, this guy can't fight for shit. And boy, they're in for a rude awakening. Opie's about to kick your ass, in front of everybody. There's guys now who do jujitsu who probably couldn't do 5 pull-ups to save their life, but they love jujitsu. So they have this very unassuming look. Like Dana White calls them geek assassins. That's fairly accurate. So I think sometimes people, when it comes to, it's only amateurs who make them. It's a mistake too. Judging someone's fighting ability by their physique, that's a huge mistake. It'll be interesting to see what Wilder does whenever there's a third fight, but he has a lot to do to beat Fury, because I think Fury knows how, without a shadow of a doubt, beat him. Wilder, I don't think, knows how to beat Tyson Fury, especially the one he just fought. So that's going to be really interesting. But I like both guys a lot. I think they're both.
They're awesome. I mean, like I said, like Wilder, well, you don't become champion by accident.
No.
Like one of the things I've realized when you fight, when you're sparring with awkward guys, when you have 2 people in the ring, or an octagon, whatever, everybody has a game plan. Of like what they want, how they want the fight to go. If you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you probably want to go to the ground. If you're a striker, you probably want to keep it standing. Like there's a basic, there's like an A game and a B game. Like, so you have your A game, like this, I want the fight to go, and I want to get the guy in this position, then I win. When you're fighting someone that can stand up with that kind of awkward style where they could be doing a bunch of stuff wrong, but like, okay, if I make a mistake and I get hit once, like I get knocked out, they have a touch of death. That's where Firas, Zahabi calls it. They have a touch of death. When someone hits that hard, like you can't afford to get hit by them. You just can't. So even if they're awkward as hell and you think you can take advantage of them, you have to be very cerebral with how you approach doing that. It can't be something where you just walk into it like, oh, this is going to be easy. If the guy hits you once, you go down. You saw with a lot of Wilder's opponents, they might have actually outboxed him for much of the fight, but he kept coming forward. He's a very tough guy. Yeah. And he's actually very hard to kind of predict when he's going to hit you because he does this like sort of this hands down, back and forth, looking. Yeah, I want to hit you, but like I don't want to get hit either. So I'm like, I'm going to be very careful of this. And then if he hits you once, oh great, now I'm knocked out. Like you wake up, you don't know what the fuck happened. It's cool to see.
When he fought Luis Ortiz, we could argue that Luis Ortiz has way better technique than him.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Him twice. So Wilder that's what appealed to me about him. I go, wow, this guy is something different. I mean, I've never seen someone fight like this. And I didn't watch boxing in a long time until people like Fury and Wilder and Anthony Joshua started coming on the scene. I'm like, okay, this is pretty interesting. This reminds me, because I grew up during the Mike Tyson era. So I remember the big spectacle it was. I mean, when Mike Tyson fought, it was a big deal. Even though we all knew the fight would probably only last a minute, we waited the whole night to see that 1 minute. I mean, it was a big deal. He was this god to people. I mean, he just transcended. You just had to see it in action. So now I feel like we're getting a little bit of that magic back with some of these personalities and interesting guys, interesting fighters. Remember when Joshua fought Ruiz, right? And talk about judging a guy's physique. I mean, I remember
Ruiz,
a fight. I didn't know anything about either one, but people are like, "Oh, you got to watch Anthony Joshua." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I look at Joshua and I was like, man, this guy looks like a Greek god. No wonder this guy's so good, right? That's just your first superficial thought.
Yeah, of course.
You look at the other guy, you're like, this guy looks like he just hit 5 Vegas buffets before this fight. I go, this guy's going to get destroyed. And then that guy wins the fight.
Andy Ruiz, I mean, this is, who else has talked about this? I want to say, I mean, it's been mentioned by a few, a guy's name escapes me. Jose Antonio has talked about this before, where like there's this general, you going, babe? Okay, it's girlfriend.
There's this you move out there with you, or is this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, very cool.
Yeah, but there's always this general assumption, which is not incorrect, that if someone looks really fit and in shape, right? Well, they must be the better athlete, right? And like that, you generally can be like, yeah, that's true. That's a good stereotype most of the time. At the same time, though, like depending upon the sport, like movement efficiency and technique, and game plan execution, and then also just body type differences. You can have guys, like Ruiz.
Yeah.
You can have guys like Daniel Cormier, where they don't have the lowest body fat percentage. Obviously, like they're thicker boys. Endomorphic, they're thicker boys, right? But they've got phenomenal technique and they've got phenomenal conditioning. And if you're unprepared for that, and they hit pretty hard, they're going to kick your ass.
And that body fat can be used to your advantage in the sense that you have more weight to throw into that punch. So think about how much weight Ruiz is throwing into those punches, and you're absorbing, because I mean boxers, I mean it's the punch basically starts from your feet and the rotation. So execute it properly. You're not just doing this. You're not just doing standing bench presses. You're putting your whole body into it. So imagine whether it's muscle or fat, it's still a lot of body weight. That's going.
Well, they're not tall either. You know, something like I'm over 6 feet, so like I have very long arms and legs.
Yeah.
When you're taller, if you want to maximize your power, you have to catch people like on the end of your range, right?
Right.
You know, being able to fight up close when you're tall, like you have to really work on it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because you know, like your range of motions is being cut short, right?
Right.
When you have like a shorter but big guy, you know, like Cormier Ruiz, we're like, I don't even know if they're 6 feet tall, right? But they're over 200 pounds, like, you know, they're 205, 210, 220. You know, Tyson was like 220 or 215 at 5'10".
Right.
They generate so much torque within a short range of motion. Yeah. When they hit you, like, my God, are you going to feel it? Like some of the guys I've seen here, like some of the older instructors, they're retired. They're in like their 30s, 40s. They've put on weight. They've got a gut. They love beer, and they're not as good as they once was, as they once were. But they are as good once as they ever were. Like you put them in the ring for a round, just a round full out. They've got 20, 30, 40 more pounds extra body mass. They're going to get tired. Like they'll get tired after the first round. But they have 5 minutes where they are going to, sparring them. It's going to be like getting hit with a wood chopper. And you're gonna feel it, and actually that body fat, in a lot of cases, it does provide cushioning.
Yeah,
it does. Like being like what we're gonna call like that Gollum physique. Like now they can take shots better, and when you're kicking a guy that you're striking someone that's 180 versus 140, of course the smaller guy's easier to move. A short squatty guy, that's not the case.
Right.
At all.
No, it's 100%. I think of that. Until you've experienced training with a professional, you don't know the level of expertise these people are at. Like there's a friend of mine who was a UFC fighter. His name is Dale Hart. He was never a top tier fighter. He fought Corey Hill. He kicked him and broke his leg. That's what he's most famous for. I mean, this is years ago when he was in the UFC. He's been retired for a while. So anyway, he's a friend of mine, and I used to do pad work with him. He would show me some techniques. And one time he was trying to show me how to throw a punch. So I held the pads for him. He's like, okay, watch how I put my whole body into it. And every single one of those punches he threw, and this guy's probably 170 pounds or so, not a big guy at all. But he put so much of his body weight into those punches. And my hands were hurting with the pad because he hit it so hard. Every single one of those punches was a knockout for someone on the street. Against another professional fighter, that's a different story. But someone on the street who the last fight they were in was when they were in high school, or maybe they got into a pushing match at a concert, but they haven't actually been in a fist fight ever, at least not for a long time, and certainly not against a professional fighter. But 99% of people who got hit by Dale would have been out cold. I would have been out cold with any of those punches. And then he was looking at me, he goes, here's what you're doing. You're going boom, boom. You're doing all this muscle punching. He goes, what you want to do is you imagine imagine a towel where you're trying to tag someone with it, like a whip, using a towel like a whip. It's a little bit wet. That's how you throw a punch. So you whip it, boom, bring it right back. Not this boom, boom, He goes, you're generating a good amount of power, but it's all muscle power. What you want to do is utilize your entire body weight. And not only did that help me with punching technique, I started applying some of that to weightlifting. I go, okay, when I do kettlebell training now, when I do a kettlebell swing, I'm gonna put my whole body into that swing. In other words, I'm gonna keep the bell connected to my body as long as possible. And then when the hip drive occurs, I'm gonna use that to launch the bell. And it was amazing how much of a difference that made.
So I think that's why kettlebells have positive carryover to this, let's say general combat sports.
Right.
Because when you're the kettlebell guy, but I've been using kettlebells a long time. Because the kettlebell adds a fourth joint to the body, obviously the handle, it swings, you have to stabilize it. But all the movements are based on a pendulum.
Right.
So there's this constant recirculation of energy. You can't. I mean, you could try muscling a kettlebell, but obviously the movement's going to feel very inefficient. You have to be able to relax. Obviously you swing out, there's a relaxation point, you catch the weight, you explode again. Even for something like a standing press, you have to stay pressurized. You can't get super tense and move it. Like you have to have that mobility in the shoulders,
right,
and the torso and the core. So they work really, really well. I brought some kettlebells to the gym recently. I was like showing the guys. I'm like, just start doing this kind of swing thing. Just do the swing. Like that's all much. Just try the swing, and if you like it, keep doing it. If not, whatever. But there's definitely transference that way.
Yeah,
but
relaxation strength is what I'm calling it. Kettlebell swing. Yes. You're very relaxed, especially if you're planning on doing it for 10 minutes. When I first learned kettlebells was from Pavel Tsatsouline. So he taught us a lot of his high tension stuff, which I fairly quickly deviated from because I found it limiting. So I mean, if you're trying to use the tension that you would use for 3 reps or 5 reps for something that you're trying to do for 10 reps, it's counterproductive. And then it got to the point where I didn't need to tense up at all. I could lift really heavy kettlebells. I'm talking about pressing and so for like swings and snatches, you're not tight anyway. But even for kettlebell presses, I found that the more tension I built, the harder it became. Now you feel like you're doing it in slow motion, all this, So now it's more about relax, chest bump, bam, drive it overhead. And the more relaxed I became, the more, not only the more weight I could lift, but the more repetitions I could do. Even when I do a lot of deadlifts, I don't tense up at all. I don't squeeze the bar as hard as possible. I don't contract my abs and flex every muscle in the body because that has a negative impact on my ability to accelerate the bar from point A to point B. So you have to use a little bit of tension to protect your back and so forth. But I've always found that too much tension, it's almost like trying to drive as fast as possible and hitting the brakes at the same time you're hitting the pedal. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, there's a term, like a phrase I say. I read this years ago. Marty Gallagher.
Yeah,
he wrote the book. Yeah, he wrote the book, The Purposeful Primitive, and there was an essay he wrote in there. I want to say it was about like the Russian lifters, Soviets during like late 1980s. Right. He said they were known for being very calm when they'd lift.
Yeah,
it's like Americans would psych up, and guys would they're banging their heads on the bar and doing crazy shit. Yeah, he's like, but the Russians, he's like they were robotic, but like they were extremely calm. Like the term he used, like lifting on a calm heart.
Right.
Like they walk up to the bar, they look at, they position themselves. They didn't carry the level of tension that, like, let's say, like a lot of times the American lifters would, where they're trying to like get into like this fight zone.
Yeah.
And for many, many, many years, I mean, still to this day, they tend to dominate lifting. And most of them, they're not going crazy that way. I mean, obviously, like technique is technique on a certain level. It's like everybody's having to produce high levels of force, but you can see like that mindset of wanting to get your body and really almost like your mind like into this extremely rigid state that's actually not conducive to movement, generally speaking, and across any discipline. There's particular situations perhaps.
No, 100%. And you're bang on about the Russian lifters. They especially the kettlebell lifters. There's people like Valery Fedorenko who can military press well over 100-pound kettlebell 30 times each arm, and he's very relaxed the whole time he's doing it. It's never rep number 30 looked like rep number 1, and his whole body is just relaxed. It's hard to even see where the power is coming from. I go, you're seeing it happen right in front of you. Go, how is he generating that kind of power? And I think all of this screaming and theatrics that a lot of people like to do at the gym, and most of the time it's not even people that are lifting anything impressive. They're just trying to be ostentatious and get a bunch of attention. I don't know who they're trying to impress, but nobody's impressed. But anyway, all these theatrics, I think, is a dissipation of energy. I actually like to listen to relaxing music on the way to the gym. I like intense music once the workout starts, but on the way to the gym, it'll be like George Michael and Elton John and stuff like that, because I was like, I don't need to psych myself up on the drive over and waste a bunch of energy and burn adrenaline. And then once I start getting to those heavier sets, okay, let me use something that a little bit more intense that I enjoy. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. This whole no pain, no gain, or you got to push it to the limit every single time, training to failure. Remember when that was a big craze? And the problem with all of these things is that you never really get good at the skill set of whatever you're trying to do. I mean, imagine if you went and trained and you just kept throwing punches until you couldn't throw another punch. And then you're like, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and keep it going. So every day, what do those last couple of punches look like? They're going to look terrible because you're really fatigued and you're tired. And now you're just reinforcing all these bad pathways. You're not getting better at the skill set of whatever it is you're trying to improve.
Yes, Sagat told me that. I've heard that from a number of coaches here where they're like, for the hour that we spend, like it's quite intense since the goal is just, as high energy as possible, but at the same time, perfect technique for everything.
Right.
If say, maybe we're just working hands for an hour. Like once your shoulder starts burning out, where it's like you're throwing this sloppy, crossover jab, or it's not accurate. It's like, all right, like there's no point in doing this anymore. Like let's move on to something else. But they've told me that a lot of times, like he's had like a lot of like foreign fighters come, they train them for like a session, and they just want to do everything full out blast as hard as they can. But then they start getting messy, or they have the foreign fighters, the faring fighters, who will come and maybe they'll train for like 1, 2, 3 months, and the first week they get there, almost everybody does the same thing. They're either they're deconditioned, and then like they overdo it in the gym, or they get there and they think they're in awesome, phenomenal shape. Right. And they just try to go hardcore on everything, like every exercise. Like, I want to run 10 miles in the morning. I want to fucking skip rope and be doing double unders. All right, we're going to hit the back now. I'm going to kick the back as hard as I fucking can, like ever for this 10 minutes. I'm like, and then they get through like a workout and they're just gassed, right? They're burned out. It's like, bro, you need to train again like in like 4 hours. Like this is Monday. Like we're training every day this week. And then, by the time they get to like Wednesday, they're just burned out. The CNS is fried. They get sick, and then it's like, oh, I need to take it slow now. It's like the goal in training is not to put forth this Americans especially, I think it's like this external level of effort. Like you need people to see how hard you're working, right? Or you need to somehow see yourself like, I'm training so hard. It's like that's not how you actually improve at something.
No, never.
Especially with like conscientious practice is a feeling out process. It's exploratory, it's self-discovery.
Right. You're
going through it. Sometimes you have to relax. You have to like sort of take that, secondary view. Like, okay, like how am I doing about this? Let me think it. Let me think it out. Okay, let me practice it, and I'll drill it till it becomes instinct. It's sort of this rise and fall. It's not this straight ramped incline, and then you hit the wall.
Right.
And then you're crash and burns. Like, I mean, you could try to approach it that way, but in the long term, whether it's lifting or fighting or anything else, it's like most guys who try to train that way, what happens? They just get injured and burn out, and then they're hurt, and they can't train that way anymore. And then it's like, oh, well, I used to be really fit back in the day. Then I blew my pec out, or my back, or my hip, or I ruptured my hamstring, and you know how it is now. I'm like,
I never want to be that guy who talks about what you used to be able to do. I used to be. I'm like, you probably should have been a little more, conscious, mindful about how you approach that. Yeah, if you're a little bit more mindful, you wouldn't be talking about what you used to be able to do. You'd still be doing something like that or something else that you enjoy doing. No, that's very true though, because I mean, if you want to get good at playing the piano, you don't just keep playing until you sound terrible and people are going, all right, stop. That Mozart doesn't sound good now. It sounded good 2 hours ago, but now it sounds terrible. And then you also don't, if you go at full capacity every time, you're just demonstrating what you can do currently. Mm-hmm. Not ever building anything. It's like I like to say, you got to have deposit training and withdrawal training, and most of your workouts should be deposits. Just like with your income, you should be making more deposits than withdrawals, ideally. So with training, if you're doing mainly deposit training, you're training at maybe 75, 80% of your maximum, maybe even less than that. And you're doing it frequently. And the goal is you're just working on technique. You're just putting in time. You're refining things. You're getting better at it. And then you go through an intensification phase. So maybe you do this deposit training for 8 weeks. And now you have 2 to 3 weeks of an intensification phase where you're not training the failure, but you're ramping things up. You're getting a gauge of, okay, where am I at right now? And I'll use that to adjust my deposit training sessions. So it's for me personally, especially, I find that this rotation between the two is very effective. And I used to write programs for myself, but now it's very intuitive. Now it's time for me to focus on deposit training. Okay, let me ramp things up, see where I'm at, intensity. I do that for a couple of weeks. All right, let's go back to deposit training. You've maxed out where you're at right now. And then for a regular person though, they never need to do the intensification. They could just do deposit training into perpetuity. You're not going to get injured. You're not going to get burned out. You're not going to feel like shit. Because I remember this one comedian made a funny joke. He goes, my trainer put me through this workout and I was exhausted afterwards. My body's all sore. And then he said, I have to do it again tomorrow. And he goes, well, I mean, why didn't I? It's like, I didn't notice anything after that one workout. It's not like my abs looked better or I felt like I looked better in the mirror. He's like, I got to do it again. And I think that's the mentality a lot of people have about exercise because their experience with it is that it's unpleasant. And I'm not saying it's going to be all fun and games. No. But it shouldn't be so unpleasant that the idea of doing it again is nauseating. You're going like, oh God, I got to do that again. Because you're not going to sustain that. It's a battle of attrition, and every battle of attrition ends the same way. You lose.
Yeah, I mean, fatigue does not equal fitness.
No.
Like that's something that, like, and a lot of people would do well to learn that lesson. Like,
yeah,
how tired you can make yourself within a given workout is not an objective assessment of whether it was a good workout or not. Yeah, I mean, I'll be like, this because for the average person, like, that's how they look at fitness. Like, what's the hardest workout you could do? I'm like, hardest in regard to what? Like, just you feeling tired at the end? I'm like, you could spin in a freaking circle for an hour, jump up and down for an hour straight, and then, like, do push-ups to fail, and just keep doing that for 2 hours. Like, you'll be very tired.
Yeah.
Like, that's completely unproductive, but you'll be tired.
See, I used to have people complain when I would do private sessions with someone that the next day they would say, I wanted a harder workout. I wasn't that fatigued afterwards. I felt like I could have worked out again. I go, well, look, you came to do a 1 hour session with me to learn kettlebell technique. If you told me the goal was fatigue, I would have taken you through a much different session. But I'm assuming you actually want to learn how to do things properly. So you're not ready to take it to a level where you're going to be fatigued because your technique is garbage right now. But even when your technique looks good, that shouldn't be the goal. But for a lot of people who work out are stimulus addicts. And training for them is just like whatever drug fix is for someone else, for a junkie. Some people are addicted to heroin or alcohol or whatever it is. It can be marijuana. You're addicted to something. They're not addicted to any of those things, but they are addicted to the stimulus of working out. So as a result of that, they work out way too often, they work out way too long, and they never take a break. Like, we hear some dumb sayings such as, in 20 years, I've never taken a day off from working out. It's like, well, that's stupid. Okay? Because these Russian lifters, they train really hard for a while. They may take months off in between training camps, or like they're Olympic athletes. They may not work out for a couple of months, let their body fully restore. And then they're actually out of shape, of course. It's been 3 months. I'm not necessarily recommending this long, but they realize that there's a point to this, because when they train so diligently and so disciplined that there's no balance. They're not going out for drinks afterwards and all that. So when they have a period of, let's say, a couple of months where they're not focused on that, they're just going to relax. They're going to eat whatever they want. They're going to get out of shape. And they're going to come back in, and then just going to build it back up, get it going again. So
rebuild capacity.
Yeah, if you can't take a week off from training, that's a problem. I would say if you can't take a week off from almost anything, it's a problem. You can't go a week without drinking coffee. You can't go a week without looking at your phone every 5 seconds. You can't go a week without training. What does that say? It says that you've got a serious attachment.
Yeah, a lot of people are fatigue addicts. I mean, you see this especially if anyone that works like in a commercial gym. You always have those people that show up every day, and their workouts are completely unproductive in regards to actual strength gains, muscle gains, body composition. 100%. They just work out to be tired. Like they need that feeling of, like, I'm exhausted. Okay, like now I'm good. I'm like, yeah. I always wonder, I'm like, what is that, like a sort of like a physio-psychological replacement for something else? In regards to, like, your overall life, where, like, this is the thing that you need. Like, you need, like, this. Basically, like, you're like a cortisol junkie. Like, you need the stress, like, to, like, make you feel basically like you get beaten to the ground.
Right. They're addicted to that feeling. It's an overcompensation method for
there you go.
Or neglected, no doubt about it. Exercise addiction. I remember this one lady took my course. She used to be active on T Nation a lot, and very nice lady. She took my course, and then she said something. If it wasn't for my workout regimen, I wouldn't be able to deal with my job that I hate. I go, well, you should probably stop. Because what do you mean? I go, well, if you stop working out, then you're not going to tolerate having a job you hate, because, see, right now, working out is allowing you to stay at a job you hate, when in reality, you need to go find something you enjoy doing. And if working out is preventing you from doing that, then the workout is a negative factor right now. It's an impediment. Of course, none of this made any sense. Like,
no, it didn't make an impact.
But it just came out. It just came out of me when you said that, because I go, look, I've been where you've been. I've had jobs I hated doing, and I used to work out afterwards, and I had a similar mindset that she had. I go, wow, these workouts are really helping me keep my sanity. I was like, well, what would really help you keep your sanity? Quitting this job you hate and having the courage to finally go do something you enjoy doing. I think that would do amazing things for your sanity.
I saw it in the powerlifting world sometimes. Like, there's yeah, this is not all powerlifters, but there are those guys that are in strength sports where I saw the story so many times where it's like their marriage is falling apart, life's falling apart, like their family, social life is like just in the dumps. But thank God they have the gym right to go lift, and it's like I don't know that sacrificing your social relationship well-being, and then using lifting as sort of this vector of like, well, it's okay, like even though that might be god awful, and I'm lonely, and I'm depressed, and I got profound mental health issues, but I can still lift heavy weights, so I'll be fine. I'm like that's good that like we all have an outlet, right? Like iron therapy, like that's great. Everyone loves iron therapy. It's all about iron therapy, right? In that part of the industry, right? That part of fitness. The iron's therapy. I'm like that's great, but I think it'd be better if you actually address that. Like imagine having a life where it didn't require you to like burn down your marriage and lose custody of your kids. Imagine you had both. Imagine you could lift weights and also see your children. Like imagine that.
Can't. Yeah, there's no reason why you should have. Sometimes you have to go through a state of being imbalanced to achieve something, but you don't go that far. You don't, and also you don't want to sacrifice all of that. It reminds me of this documentary that came out on Louis Simmons recently. I think it was called Louis Simmons Against the World, something like that.
West Side Against the World.
Yeah, West Side Against the World. That's it. Now there was one of Louis' training partners, and he said that he missed all of his kids. I don't know if it was a soccer game or something like that, football game, but he missed all of his kids' games because whenever his kid was playing, it was a training day, and he didn't want to miss his workouts at Westside. That's way too much of an attachment. Okay, I mean, why can't you get that workout in later? It's like no. This workout has to be done at this time, even though my kid's playing a game. So I can't go to the game because I've got to get this workout in. I go, that's a little bit too extreme in my opinion, especially when we're just talking about a workout here. Just modify your schedule. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be at every single one of your kids' games, but I mean, at least go to some of them because it sounded like it's important to your kid. It should be important to you too, I would imagine. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I realize, anytime you do anything to an extreme level, like you do have to pick your sacrifices.
Sure.
But I think there also is this misconception of like, well, if I'm going to take this to the max, then I just absolutely neglect everything else. I'm like, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that that's necessarily necessary.
Absolutely.
You can, in fact, do things to a maximal extent, and with some just being diligent and maybe just like literally just scheduling shit better, you can still have other areas of your life that you've developed.
Oh yeah.
This idea of this single-mindedness is very appealing, obviously, because it simplifies everything. I'm just going to do this and then screw everything else. Screw it. All right, just don't really think about it. I'm like, there are people who manage to be high performing across multiple areas, but they learn how to like literally just like it's managing their time, prioritization. Like, all right, I'm going to do this from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'm going to do this from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Yeah, it could be that basic, just like this maintaining an actual schedule. And they managed to get to a world-class level. Like I've seen that. Like I mean, one of my a friend of mine, John Fitch. So MMA fighter, right? Obviously, very accomplished guy. Very accomplished guy. Yeah, like I don't need to say like, oh, he's pretty good. Like people that listen know who he is. John's got two sons. He's got two sons. I think he's gone through like a separation divorce now. But he's basically a full-time dad. He's still top 10 in the world within his weight class. And like I follow him on Instagram. Like I know the guy. Like, yeah, he's always training. He's always getting better. Obviously, his art. He's also still being a father. It was not a situation of like, I had kids, screw my kids, screw my wife. I guess I'll never see you. It's like he's actually managed to mediate both things and still be extremely high performing. Most people are never going to be a top 10 welterweight in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, like that balance, and maybe it's not perfect balance, but there is, some formula that's attainable if you actually put some effort into it.
I would say definitely in the larger scope of things, sometimes you have to go through that imbalanced state for a certain amount of time to achieve a precise goal. But most of the time, looking over the course of a year, there should be periods of more balance, periods of being imbalanced. You rotate, just like you rotate between deposit training and intensification training. It's like that. You can't be in one forever. You can't be in this imbalanced state forever because you burn out. And then if you're always too balanced, then you're not going to achieve anything high level, assuming that's important to you because it's all about whatever you want to do. So I think it's finding the right rhythm for you. That's something that each person has to determine on their own what's effective. But John Fitch is based out there, isn't he? Doesn't he have a facility in Bangkok?
No, Fitch, he actually lives in San Jose. So
I could have sworn he had something overseas somewhere.
no, it's so American Kickboxing Academy, AKA.
Yeah.
So they have a facility in Phuket. So they have a very large gym there.
That's
yeah,
it.
which
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's open right now. Like the interprovincial travel here has been like kind of slow.
Yeah.
I was planning going there probably maybe at the end of this year, or possibly next year for like a few months to, let's get some experience in that way. Since they cover all things. It's not just Muay Thai.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I asked him about it. He's like, yeah, he's come out here to train, quite often. There's a lot of obviously professional fighters that come to Thailand to work on their stand-up game. So they'll be here like 1, 2, maybe 3 months, kind of go through the camp that way.
Right.
And then level up the skills, and then go back to maybe like their home gym.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. This has been awesome. This is
great conversation.
Yeah, man. I always have good conversations with you. I appreciate the time. So, where can people find out more about what you're doing right now? And you're still putting together programs for people. Is this some kind of subscription plan you have?
No, the programs are quite simple. So this on a month basis, I always release a new program. So this past month, it's July. So like Ancient Athletics came out. So it was basically a compilation of about, I think like 25, 26 essays I wrote on the subject of basically like ancient Greek methodologies and training, which is a whole different, like very cool subject. Really, way more, like I said, like way more historical records than you'd ever think that actually exists. Like stuff on, the exercises, even the training schedules, how they periodized back then, like their recovery methods, like, very, very cool stuff. So that program came out this month. It's on my website, but easiest place to find me, this Cortes.site. That's like where the newsletter is. Anyone can subscribe. And then obviously like, Instagram, I update, AJA_Cortes, update Instagram. Twitter, I'm very active on. So there's a few places where people can reach me, but anyone that wants to actually like, either work on a program or, do something actually fitness. I also have like a Telegram channel as well, where all the clients are, which is a pretty big channel. I've had a lot of obviously people that, I've trained over the years, but all those places are access points. So
yeah, that's awesome. And it's really interesting that you can manage all of this remotely. I mean, you can live anywhere you want in the world, and I could too. And I think that goes back to what freedom is very important, and each person has to decide what freedom means to you. And my definition of freedom is very similar to yours in the sense that I don't want my day to revolve around having to do things that I don't want to do most of the time. I've been through it, but you have to go through periods where you're going to do a bunch. You're going to work a lot more than you care to, but you can get to a point where now you do the work that you want to do. Because I enjoy working, I'm always going to work. Mm-hmm. My goal was never to make a good amount of money and stop working, because I like working. I like doing what I'm doing. What I would do even if I weren't getting paid for it. The research I do, the information I put out, that kind of stuff I just like doing. So, but I think you can enjoy life so much more when you figure out how to make your environment work in your favor, as opposed to just being a slave to the dogma that's just been passed down, where you have to do a job you hate and you live for the weekends and you live for that vacation. Life doesn't have to be like that for a lot of people. You can figure out a pathway of something that at least is interesting to you. Ideally, it's exciting, but even just interesting would be a step in the right direction, because you just think about how many people are not interested in whatever they're doing. And I think this is why you attract a lot of people, especially, it seems like you get a lot of young men coming to you for guidance, from what I can see. Because not that definitely much older than they are, but you have a lot of wisdom, especially for a young guy, early 30s. Mm-hmm. And I think, and also you live life on your own terms, and you're very authentic. And I think those are all things that people find attractive.
I think so. I mean, I never set out to be a role model that way. But like I said, when I was younger, I had this idea of like, I want to own my time. And I know what I enjoy. I love teaching. I love to train, obviously. I love training. I always want to be challenging myself that way. And I accepted very early on, like, okay, like, personal training, like there was a solid 7+ years of like waking up every day, 6 a.m., training clients until 8, 9 p.m. every single day. But yeah, I knew like if you want to master something, if you want to really have a skill set, if you really want to have something to offer people, you want to be valuable to others, well, you have to build that value over time. You have to have that knowledge and expertise and experience. There's no avoiding that. You can't hack your way around applied knowledge.
Right.
And then in creating that, like after a certain point, I realized, okay, like I've learned different skill sets with copywriting, with marketing, with sales, running a website. Like there's all those business, aspects of online, like online functionality. Running an online business, it's like, oh, it sounds really cool. I'm like, running an online business is like running a regular business.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot to learn. You have to be willing to do it. Okay. Now that I've done that, like, I put myself in this position where, now I have the freedom I want. But that was all engineered. Like it was very deliberate. It was not an accidental process. It was not me assigning things to fate or hope or circumstance, or I hope maybe I'll get lucky and something good will happen. I'm like, no, if you want to live life on your terms, then you have to define what those terms are, the environment that takes place in, what your values are, what your principles are that you live by. You have to hold yourself to a code that way, to standards. Then you execute that on a daily basis, and you might hit that threshold you break through of like, oh wow, man, your life looks really cool, man. Like, how'd you do it? Like, that was a 10-year process.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't be 20, 22, and then like, age 23, like I don't know. And now I'm an econ millionaire. Some bullshit get rich quick scheme now that I see like young guys fall for.
Right. No, 100%. 100%. And, if you just think about your life, if you didn't have the courage to pursue what you wanted to do, that's a scary thought. Like I think about my life, what my life might have been like if I never got fired from the last job I ever had, or I just continued going down that path, getting another job like that. But I remember when I was 28, and I would look at people in their 40s that had been doing this kind of work for pretty much most of their working life, and I didn't want to be where they were at. So I knew I knew that there had to be something better for me. And my personality is not a good fit for working for other people anyway. I have to do things my way, right or wrong. I don't always make the right move every time, but I take full responsibility for whatever move I make, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody would be good at an entrepreneur. In fact, probably a small percentage of the population would enjoy being an entrepreneur because it requires a lot of discipline. Like you said, it's not something where you just get started and then you hope for the best. I mean, your success is a result of taking many of the right steps over a period of time.
Yeah, and you're constantly recalibrating at the same time.
Yeah.
The question I posed this to my guys the other day, I'm like, I think this especially for men, where like you hit that point in life, when you're young, when you're older, where like, am I a coward?
Right.
Is like what drives male insecurity at the most basic level, stuff that just like triggers guys. It's like, oh, I'm a coward. I'm not brave. I'm not enough for this. Like you're going to be confronted with those kinds of choices. And like, what's the difference? It's like either you're brave or you retreat back into making the safe decision where you don't get challenged by something.
Right.
But once you are brave, like, bravery is a habit in a way, courage is a habit. Once you've piled up a victory, like, okay, I challenged myself in a small way and then a slightly larger way and a slightly larger way. That's all right. I actually can keep doing this. I have it in me. Okay, great. Like, awesome. Like, keep building on that.
I think that you said about the code is very important. It's important for a man or anyone to have a code of how you're going to behave and how you want to live your life and what you're prepared to do and what you're not going to do. And I actually went to a liberal arts college like you did. I went to the College of Worcester, and I have a degree in religious studies. And I actually enjoyed getting that degree because I felt that I needed a code at that stage of my life. I feel like I'm all over the place. I don't have a philosophy for how I should be living my life. I didn't grow up in this religious setting, and I didn't have philosophical parents that had real strong beliefs on how life should be or how their lives should be. So religious studies, in particular, Eastern religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism and Sufism really appealed to me. And Sufism, Islamic mysticism, appealed to me the most. That's what I ended up studying the most. And a lot of it was about taming your ego and not being so driven by ego desires and so forth, connecting with your higher soul and using that as a way to guide your ego and so forth. So I would read all these books and I'm like, this is amazing material. And then I'm started thinking, I go, you know what? I'm not going to get suckered into all this materialism crap when I graduate. I'm not gonna get pulled in all these different directions. Of course, once you graduate and the reality of life kicks in, all that stuff goes out the window. But those were still core principles that were important to me. And I think it helped guided me back to where I wanted to be. And it also allowed me, without intentionally doing this, having a unique selling point in the sense that I was able to infuse all this philosophical stuff in my overall message. And it didn't come off inauthentic because it's something that I spent a lot of time, developing. But I would notice that when I started doing that in the kettlebell world, we would see other people try to be philosophical too, and it never lasted long because it wasn't authentic. So they would have one or two articles that were philosophical, and then they would just drop off from there. And I go, like when Popple said, follow what Mike is doing to build your business, he didn't mean literally, rip Mike off. He just said, look at what he does. He puts himself out there in a way that differentiates from others. And again, it was never intentional. I just have to be authentic. Whatever that comes with that is fine. I'm okay with that. And I don't expect everyone to agree with me, and I don't need to agree with everyone else. You and I are friends. We don't have to agree with everything to be friends. I think it's kind of, not only is that boring, it's, you don't really learn anything either, because it's nice to get different perspectives. But that whole notion of developing a code of how you're going to conduct yourself, I think that is crucial. And maybe it used to be a rite of passage in historical times. Maybe we just don't have that anymore, where it's go, okay, you're a boy, and after you do these things, now you're at the early stages of being a man now.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into that. Where, I mean, most of my writing going back to, how long have I been writing now? It's been like since 7 years, 2013, 2012, when my first articles were published. Like they were always of like what was called like the philosophical slant. Just because I was always trying to figure myself out. Right. Which I think is healthy for especially for younger guys. Since very similar to you, I didn't grow up in a religious household. I was not raised with sort of these structural virtues of like here's how you live your life. This is what you live for. It was very much just my parents were boomers. It was like we just want you to be happy and like just do what you want. I'm like. That, which sounds great, but that doesn't really, give you much direction or actual structure. Obviously, it's just figure it out for yourself. Okay. So I was always trying to figure these things out. I'd write about it as I was, going through my own my own personal training career experience, and then over a period of time, as you apply yourself to experiences and get tested by them, you see how you react. You see how you handle things, see how you can improve, you see how it makes you feel, and you have to take all that in as part of the experience of living. I was very much influenced by both, I guess you say, like Judaism. So I am technically Jewish, but I remember reading about Buddhism as a kid, like Zen Buddhism, and there was the idea of like not to necessarily dissolve your ego, but like you remove sort of that like what I call like the smaller ego, that pettiness from like a lot of your actions.
Right.
And I would like to think anyway that gave me a grounding point for being able to develop myself and just basically really if nothing else improve my skill set repeatedly, because I was never attached or married to anything.
Yes.
And nor was I really concerned with how things looked to other people. A lot of what I see today with young guys, and this is probably because of the social media, Instagram culture, it's this obsession with, well, how do things appear? Like what are the appearances? And the truth, like a real truth of life, is that the unseen is more powerful than the seen. Doing things for the sake of how someone else, will look upon it, that has nothing to do with you. That's all about what you think their perceptions are. Like that's completely a plastic way of living.
Yeah.
But I see how that's how a lot of people approach their values. That's how they approach their decisions. That's how they approach, even like what they think they should do for a career. That's how they approach their day-to-day life. And that's not going to give you anything real at all. All the best parts of my life, I'm not posting them on Instagram.
There you go.
I'm not carrying the camera around the gym like, hey guys, here's my master, and here's us hitting the bed, and here's all. I'm like, I don't think I've posted anything about training other than the cats that live in the gym. Like that's about it. Because it's not important to show that. Like I'm there for me. I'm doing it because those are my experiences. Maybe a year from now there'll actually be something that's substantial.
Yeah.
But showing off for the sake of showing off so I can get accolades or impressions. It's not a situation where I don't care. It's like that's not important. That's not what's real.
No, it's not. And I think it just reinforces that this is something you actually really want to do, because I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people do things under the pretext of, I'm going to post this on social media. It's like, hey, let's go do the zip line at Fremont Street. Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, and plus we can film it and post it on Instagram. I go, why do we need to post it? Let's just go do it. Let's go have some fun here. So I think we're in this. Look, I go to a lot of concerts. At least I did before this pandemic, anyway. And I'm watching this band. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm having a good time.
Awesome.
I look around and I'm like, holy shit! Everybody's on their phone right now. Everybody's doing this, or worse, they're filming and then posting on Instagram, and then filming and then posting. So you're not present.
No.
I think being present is not only crucial for enjoying life, it's crucial for actually developing any skill set. Because I mean, if you're at the gym doing pads and all that, and then your teacher says, okay, take a 1 minute break, and you're like, okay, good. That gives me a chance to get on Instagram and provide an update, and maybe I'll post a couple of selfies too while I'm at it. Yeah, that's just not going to work. So I actually didn't. I got rid of most social media a while back just because I felt like it was a waste of time. I got rid of Twitter, I got rid of Facebook, and I was about to get rid of Instagram too. I go, I don't need this crap. What do I need it for? And then I started, once I started doing this show, then it made me realize, okay, now you have a medium to use Instagram effectively, because what I do is I post these 2-3 minute clips. Like
yes.
I'll make
I've watched them.
Yeah, I'll make at least 5 to 10 clips of this conversation, and I'll post a couple of minutes and then direct people to the full episode. But on Instagram, bless you, on Instagram, no one is going to watch a 2-hour episode of something on Instagram, but they'll watch a minute or 2 minutes in that. And sometimes you get more views on some of those 2-minute clips than you will the entire episode. You know, but it's what matters is that however people are watching it is fine with me. And just like what you're doing, I'm doing this show for me, because like my wife was going like, hey, well, what are your goals with the show and all that? And I was like, well, I just want to have good conversations with interesting people. That's the only goal I have, honestly, right now. Unfortunately, I know a lot of interesting people that I can get to do this. And so far, 16 episodes, it's been 16 for 16. 16 people, 16 awesome conversations. So that's all I care about right now. It's good conversations with good people and helping build more awareness for those people as well. That's it. That's all I need to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I don't know if human connection is overvalued or undervalued, or just the way it's thought of now is just a very false way. But having friendships with people and having those relationships where you can have a conversation, you just talk, and there's not this sort of like weird partisan tension or argumentation or like, yeah, I see this now, like online, it's just bizarre to me. I mean, not bizarre, but it's unfortunate where like there's these attitudes like, you know, like as you level up in life, like drop all your friends. As you get engaged with people, like you need to create like these very tight social circles. I'm like, yeah, in some cases you do. You definitely want to have strong boundaries. You know, but what makes life enjoyable, it's the people.
Yes.
Like having authentic relationships where you can just express yourself honestly with someone else.
Yeah.
Like there's no replacement for that. There's not.
Agree. 100%. And that's also one of the reasons why I started doing this, because we're all on lockdown. I was like, man, I need to talk to some people. You know, there's no one around. I mean, this is before. Now in Vegas, it's quasi open. Some of the casinos are open. Some restaurants are open. The gym is open. I've been going there. So we're not fully open, but we're somewhat open. But while we were all locked down, the only people I ever saw, like I saw my wife at the house, obviously, and then I saw some friends at the dog park each day, but these are more superficial conversations and so forth. And that's all. So when I started doing this, though, I was like, man, I'm going to do this as often as I can, because I'm really hungry for good conversations. And I could tell the other person was too, because a lot of times people will be like, well, I got about an hour right now. And then an hour into it, it's like, no, we can keep going. My cousin in India and my niece, she cracks me up. She's about 25. She's a mental health person. And she said she's been locked down in her home by herself for months. So she hasn't had any human contact. She hasn't even left her place, because in India, if you test positive for COVID, they put you in the equivalent of some kind of concentration camp. You can't even shelter at home. Yeah, so it's a little scary. So she's been stuck at home. And she says that she's so desperate for human contact that when a delivery guy comes to drop off something, she tries to keep that guy there for a while just to talk. And what's happening is these delivery guys are dealing with this so often that they drop a package and they go sprinting back to their car and take off. And these people are like, hey, wait, come back.
Wait. Say hi to me.
Yeah. So like, I mean, human connection is very important. And I think a lot of us didn't realize how important it is or was until we're in this situation where all of a sudden we're not getting it. It's certainly not at the same level that we used to get it.
No, I mean, I'm hoping this triggers some sort of social shift in people where they realize that, you know what, it's good to value people. We should value people. We should value our fellow men. We should value our fellow citizens. I'm hoping that, you know, on some level happens.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like your niece, or I've seen that with, I've had people tell me that where, Yeah, like even like a DM message, like I'll get someone like on Twitter, it's like, hey man, can I ask you a question? Sure. Yeah, I'll reply back, oh my God, thank you so much for replying. Like,
Yeah.
and it becomes this whole
Yeah.
conversation where like people are just lonely.
Yes, they
I'm
are.
like, this is not the way to live. Like, you want to have a society, you want to have a culture, whether it's big or small, where people get along and value each other, and there's interaction, communication, there's love that way.
Yeah.
Like a society of individuals, like true by themselves individuals, that's a very happy state of existence.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No one's going to be happy in that. I think that's why so many are addicted to social media, because that's the only outlet they have. They may know people in their life, but maybe these are negative forces where every time they try to do something, their circle's saying, "Oh, that's not going to work. Why are you trying to do that? That's crazy talk." So they're going, "Okay, I need to find some positivity from people somewhere, similar-minded people." So is social media perfect? No, but it's better than nothing in terms of finding some interesting people. So maybe you post a workout and a bunch of people are like, "Hey man, great job. And what are your goals?" And now you have these little interactions with people with similar minded goals. So I get the appeal of it. I remember when message boards were the thing, but pre-social media. And I used to post on message boards before I got into the business. And I would post something and people would interact with that, and you're interacting with other people. And I thought it was the coolest thing at that time, because I didn't know a lot of people that were into physical training back where I lived. I was always the anomaly with that. So I was like, oh, cool. Now I'm connecting with people that have a similar mindset that I have. And I remember that was a really cool feeling. So I get it. I get this whole thing.
Yeah, no, I remember when forums were the thing. I mean, I remember forums were like, and you get online on the forum, you like nobody knew who anyone was, since everyone had fake names and all that.
Yeah,
But like, be like, oh, you're replying and like you're quoting, like it was cool. Like you'd have awesome conversations on forums.
Remember the T-Nation forum? The T-Nation forum was a big deal. I don't know if they still even have it going, but it was a pretty big deal for a while.
I don't know.
I don't know if anyone looks if they have it going. But I remember it would be interesting to interact with people in the T-Nation forum. And then some of these people actually made it to my courses. And just the disparity between their online presence and their real world presence, that always cracked me up. Because online, they're talking a lot. They seem like a charismatic person. And then you meet this person in person, and they're very soft spoken, and they're not looking you in the eye when they're talking, and they're very shy type thing. So like this avatar is almost a extension of, okay, this is the kind of person I want to be.
Yep.
And I don't have it in the real world. I don't have the courage to have it in the real world, or haven't developed it in the real world. But online, this is the way I'm being perceived. And some people built businesses around that. I remember I would meet people that were pretty successful in our industry, and I'd be like, wow, I expect that person to be like that.
I had the same thing happen meeting people. I had that happen a lot, where you'd meet someone and they present themselves a certain way, and you expect a certain kind of personality,
right?
And they are not that personality at all. And you're like, I'm like, are they being incongruent, or is this who they wish they were?
Yeah.
Is this like their true self? Maybe when you get to know them better,
right?
I don't know. Like it was underwhelming most of the time.
It was just interesting to see that, because I'm imagining a lot of these social media influencers are probably the same kind of person. So you got this girl posting pictures of herself in her bikini every day, and here's me on the beach. Look how great my life is. All I'm doing is hanging out in a bikini and relaxing. That's my life, in luxury. And then you meet this person in person, and maybe she comes off really confident online, but sometimes you meet these people in person and they're not confident at all. They're very insecure. They have their whole investment in their self-worth is based on their physical appearance, and they know that that's a sand in an hourglass. It's dissipating with each year. So if your entire self-worth is based on the attention you get for your physical appearance, what are you going to do when you don't have that anymore? What's your self-worth going to be?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably say this too. Like we saw that really happen with fitness, obviously, since of course you're always going to be judged somewhat by what you look like. That's part of the industry. Yeah. But like with the rise of like Instagram fitness culture, you don't need experience, you don't need actual knowledge, expertise. Like so long as you look hot, you have a following and people will listen to you. But then you've seen this, like I've seen this happen like over the past few years, where people, they accrue these followings and they have people that listen to them, but they have a hollow life. And then everyone sort of oftentimes hits this breaking point of like, oh man, I need a break from social media, or like their following attacks them for something, or they kind of go crazy from the attention. I'm like, if your notoriety, if your fame is making you lose your sense of who you are, you never knew who that was in the first place.
Yeah, that's right.
It goes back to like you're attaching yourself to probably egoically to this sort of image that you want people to see you as this, whether that's real or not, probably not.
It's like that whole saying, money changes people. I go, it only changes people who don't really know who they are. And if you know who you are, because I've gone through periods in my life where I didn't make any money, and I've gone through periods where I make a great income. And honestly, I don't really feel like I was a different person as I made more money. And it's not like all of a sudden I felt like I could be an asshole to people. It's like, well, I'm just going to be a jerk to people and they're just going to have to put up with it. Or all of a sudden I'm generous now, but I wasn't generous then. So, I was generous when I wasn't making good money, not as generous financially speaking, but I still was. There were still causes I cared about, and I tried to help as much as I can. And as I made more money, I helped more. So I think if you don't know who you are, then I think money can change you, but it's only changing you because you don't really have a clear idea of what you're all about. You never develop that code, as you were talking about. If you have a code, to me, I never really had a goal of making a lot of money. I wanted to do something I really enjoyed, and as a result of that, I made a good income and continue to. But that wasn't necessarily the goal. I just wanted to enjoy life. So I think that's also part of it too. In other words, I wasn't driven to make a certain income so I can have a certain house, so I can provide a certain lifestyle, so I can attract a certain woman. And I think those are the motivations of many young men who want to make a lot of money. They go, I need to have a nice car and I need to make a lot of money. Otherwise, I'm not going to get this kind of female, aesthetically speaking wise. And those are all really fleeting goals there. And then you achieve all those things and you're not happy at all and you wonder why.
Yeah, I've told young guys that. I've seen that become sort of like a meme online almost. Like if you want to get like a hot woman, you want a hot girlfriend, whatever. Like you have to, you gotta be really successful, right? You gotta make money and have this flash and sort of this pomp. The reality is that attractive women, you could be a guy living out of your car. But if you have confidence and you have self-belief and you have a level of what swagger you want to call it, like you have a certain level of what I call like gravity to yourself. Like people are drawn to you, people are attracted to you. If you're reliant upon like money, riches, wealth to be the attractant to people liking you, respecting you, wanting to know you, like that's fair weather friends. That's fair weather relationships.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, how many men have lost their money, lost their financial power, and then like the woman leaves, or it's like, oh, I don't really want to be with you anymore.
Right.
Was she with you because of you? Was she with you because of the money? Were your friends because they loved you or because of the lifestyle you could provide around yourself?
Right.
It's like Mike Tyson, in his heyday, massive entourage, spending millions, loses it all. Who's still there? Who's still around? Yeah. Like maybe 1 out of 10, none of them, nobody. You find out you're actually pretty lonely.
Right.
Yeah, cultivating that kind of circle, like it requires more conscientious living. And and there's nothing wrong with money, obviously. Like it's funny to me. I remember back in 4 or 5 years ago when I was just pretty much dead broke. Like do you have $1 to your name? My daily routine from then till now really has not changed at all. My living situation has. I have a very nice apartment. I've got this penthouse with a view. Blah blah blah. Bullshit. Like it's great, right? Like cool. Like everything's nice. My daily schedule is literally exactly the same.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed.
Yeah, because you know who you are, so you're just continuing to be who you are. Mm-hmm. I think it says that when money corrupts. I was like, money is just a material. It doesn't have the power to corrupt you. Only you have the power to let yourself be corrupted, to let yourself change. You don't have to be changed by all those things. My spending habits are virtually the same as they were when I didn't have any money, in the sense that I'm not a materialistic guy, so it's not as if when I started making good money, I started thinking, okay, cool, now I can go finally buy all these toys I wanted. It was more, I can get more equipment for my home gym, but that's not. Right. I mean, in the big scheme of things, that's not a lot of money, no matter what you buy.
No.
But I have one car, I don't need 5. I have one house, I don't need 3 others that I might use once a year or something. And I think that's good in the sense that you're not distracted by all these materialistic pursuits, because I think it's like that saying in Fight Club, the more things you own, the more it owns you, something to that effect. I think there's a lot of truth to that. You don't need to be a minimalist living in one of those tiny houses, but at the same time, you don't need to be a hoarder either, where you're just accumulating things for the sake of accumulating things because it somehow makes you feel more empowered. I think that's a dangerous path to go on too.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'd almost like, defer back to sort of like, like I always say there's five priorities, but one of the things I emphasize a lot is like environment for people. Like, obviously, like wealth is nice. Like money gives you, like if you're going to use money effectively, like use it in the way that you can improve the environment that you live in. Whether that's changing locations, whether that's a nicer house or apartment,
right?
Not for the sake of opulence, but for the sake of just improving your energy, improving your mental health. Like,
absolutely.
For anyone that's ever been trapped in a bad social situation, you have shitty roommates, you're living with family, and it's a toxic environment. Like, being given, let's say, $10,000, like, hey, here's money to go get your own apartment, live with yourself, live with other people. Like, that's life changing.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If anything, like make money for the sake of having like the environmental power that way, where like you can live where you want, under your terms, in a place that's good for you. That will do so much more for your life than focusing on luxury items, or focusing on things that you can buy that you can show off.
Absolutely, that's 100% true. Well, cool, man. I could talk to you all night.
Yeah,
conversations are great. I'm sure you got stuff to do. Now this is your day off where you get to relax a little bit. So I appreciate it, man. It's great catching up with you. I would love to check in with you a little bit further down the path of your
journey. Definitely.
Things going. But anything I can do to help you out, please let me know.
Definitely. I mean, I appreciate the conversation. It's awesome. It's good to talk to you.
Thank you, man.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's really great catching up with you. I love everything you're doing. So keep inspiring people. And I look forward to talking again soon. You have a great day, man. I appreciate it.
I'll see you, Mike.
All right. Take care.